spell your first and last name. Please adjust the microphone so we can hear you.
Richard, R-I-C-H-A-R-D, Guzman, G-U-Z-M-A-N.
Guzman, hit that microphone, make sure it's on.
1 2 1 2.
Good enough. Thanks. Please.
Thank you, Your Honor. Sir, are you currently retired?
I am.
And where are you retired from?
From the Los Angeles Police Department.
And how many years were you employed by the LAPD?
Just short of 28 years.
Okay. What year did you retire?
January of 2021.
Okay. And where were you assigned prior to your retirement?
Robbery Homicide Division, Special Investigations Section.
What is the Special Investigations Section, or SIS?
It's a surveillance unit that's available to any entity on the police department. We assist investigators by making connections in their cases. Sometimes they need a little help connecting people to other people, people to locations, people to cars. We do kidnap for ransoms and those sort of things.
Okay. And how many years were you assigned to SIS, or the Special Investigations Section?
Just under 14 years.
Approximately how many personnel were assigned to SIS back in 2017?
It would have been 20.
Okay. And given that you work in an undercover capacity, do you guys, did you use unmarked vehicles?
Yes, unmarked vehicles.
And dress in plain clothes, unlike, not a suit, I'm assuming?
Yes, we try to blend into the environment, whatever people are wearing for that area.
Jeans, things of that nature?
Jeans are common because they're everywhere.
I want to direct your attention to Thursday, March 9th, 2017. Were you part of a surveillance operation that went on that day?
Yes, I was.
And were you briefed on March 9th about 2 o'clock by a detective from SIS, Detective Rowe?
Yes.
And were you briefed regarding a surveillance operation that was going to take place regarding 2 targets?
Yes.
To locate and follow?
Yes.
And one of those targets, was that a female by the name of Monica Sementilli?
Yes.
Do you see her here in court today?
I do.
Can you identify her, please?
She's seated over at the defense table wearing like a light colored jacket, maybe a brown shirt.
Does she look much different today than she did back in 2017?
Facially, she's recognizable. Maybe the hair's a little longer.
Okay. And were you also briefed on a second target by the name of Robert Baker?
Yes.
Were you also given residence locations?
Yes.
Was one of those residence locations both in Woodland Hills, one at 5012 Queen Victoria?
Yes.
And the other at, I think it was 6817 Independence?
That's correct.
An apartment building?
Is an apartment building, yes.
And were you also given vehicle descriptions?
Yes, I was.
One for the defendant being a black Ford F-150 truck?
Yes.
The other being a black Ford Expedition?
Yes.
Okay. Were you also provided with photographs of
Yes.
individuals, their residences, and their vehicles?
A photograph of each of the individuals. I don't recall if we got residence photos or vehicle photos.
Okay.
Probably did not.
You typically would look those types of things up?
Yeah, I mean, if it's an unusual car, I would just Google it.
No, I'm talking about the residence.
Yeah, you could look up in Google Street View and see the residence.
Trinity has been previously marked as People's 14. Do you recognize the individual you see here?
Yeah, that's Robert Baker.
And showing you People's 142. Do you recognize what you see here?
Yes, that's his vehicle, the 2000 Ford Expedition.
And were you told that this D584 GO was the license plate of that vehicle at the time?
Yes.
And were you also shown a photograph of this vehicle that you see here in People's 141?
I don't know that I was shown a photo before the surveillance began.
Okay. And during your surveillance operation, did you observe this particular vehicle, the Ford F-150, belonging to the defendant?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And did you also go to, during your surveillance operation, Baker's apartment at 6817 Independence Avenue in Canoga Park?
We did end up there, yes.
Okay. Your Honor, if I could have a photograph of the exterior of that building and the interior parking garage marked as People's 188.
Yes.
Thank you. Showing you People's 188. Do you recognize what you see here?
Yes, that's the front of 6817 Independence Avenue.
On the left?
On the left, which would be the south side of the building, that's the entry to the underground parking.
Thank you. All right. Was there a number of personnel from SIS involved in this operation that took place on March 9th of 2017?
Yes, and on March 9th, everybody was working by themselves, so everyone was solo.
So everyone was in a separate vehicle?
Yes.
And how do the members of SIS communicate while you're on a surveillance operation?
The primary way would be via radio, primarily the one installed in your car, or if you're out on foot, you have what's called a footman radio, which is a fancy way of saying a handheld radio that has a very limited range. Or we could communicate by cell phone, text, as a backup as well.
Do you often have individuals in the unit take photographs?
Yes.
And those tend to be cell phone photographs or cell phone video as well?
A lot of them end up being that way just because they're spontaneous and that's what's on hand, but
Yeah.
we do have cameras if we're prepared to take photos, but if we just arrive at a location, it's hard to get the camera out that quick.
Did you locate Robert Baker that day on March 9th at approximately 4:40 in the afternoon?
Yes, I did.
And where was that?
He was driving westbound on the 101 freeway, right around at Haskell.
And at that time, was he driving the black Ford F-150 that we looked at in the photographs in People's 142?
That's correct.
And at that point in time, did you follow him somewhere?
Yes.
Where was that?
Well, he made 3 stops before eventually ending up at his residence at 6817 Independence. I didn't have eyes on him the whole time. The way a surveillance works is it rotates around. You follow him for a short distance, hand it off to the next person.
Very similar to how G&D works?
Yes.
You have point persons?
Yes.
Okay. And at that point, you said he went back to his apartment, pulled into the underground garage?
Yes.
Okay. At about 7:10 that same night, did you observe Baker somewhere near his apartment?
Yeah, he walked out onto the sidewalk from the apartment building.
And where did he go?
He was on the west sidewalk on Independence because his house is, our apartment is on the west side. He walked southbound. He was texting on a cell phone, like what we call a candy bar style phone, all screen, no physical keyboard.
Like a smartphone?
Like a smartphone.
As opposed to a flip phone?
Yeah, it was not a flip phone.
Okay.
He was carrying 2 shopping bags, one of which I remember being Quicksilver.
Okay. And did you see where he walked to?
He walked south to the corner, which is at Van Owen, and after a couple minutes, he ended up crossing over to the east side of the street where that gas station was.
A petrol gas station?
I don't recall the name, but that sounds right.
Okay. And that's at you said at the corner, so that would have been Van Owen and Independence?
Yeah, that's the northeast corner.
Okay. And was that a gas station that was well lit?
It was, yes.
All right. And could you tell what he was wearing at that time?
He had like a dark leather jacket and dark pants.
Okay. At some point, did you see him remove his jacket?
Yes.
And what was he wearing underneath?
Like a gray T-shirt. It was short sleeve, but the sleeves were kind of long. That hung to his elbows.
Okay. And where were you at that point in time when you were making these observations?
I was parked on Independence, but I was south of Van Owen, like parked at the east curb looking north. So I could see his apartment building and I could also see that gas station.
So approximately how far is this gas station from the apartment building?
Maybe half a block, and a short block, maybe 100 feet,
Okay.
150 feet maybe.
And how far away were you from Baker at the time you made these observations? Approximately.
Approximately 75 feet.
Okay. And did you observe someone arrive at that location about 10 minutes later, somewhere around 7:20?
Yes.
And who was that?
That was Miss Sementilli in the 2013 Ford F-150.
Okay. The same vehicle that we looked at in Exhibit 141?
Yes.
Okay. And was she alone?
She was by herself, yes.
Okay. And what did you see her do as she was driving her vehicle to that location?
Well, she got out and greeted Mr. Baker. They ended up walking around to the passenger side of the pickup truck. So
Baker's or hers?
hers, the Ford F-150.
The vehicle she was driving?
Yes, it's parked in the lot facing north, so I'm seeing the back end of their car.
Okay.
They're conversing at the passenger side of that. He hugs her, grabs her butt with his, I think it was his left hand. He ends up giving her the bags of clothing. She was taking items of clothing out. Looks like she was looking at him like as if, I don't know, shopping or whatever, but like you would look at clothes to try on yourself maybe.
Okay. And did she, so she was looking at the clothing, taking them out of the bag on the passenger side?
She did take I don't know how many items of clothing, but she took at least a few.
Okay. And what else were they doing at that location?
It looked like they were talking, and there was obviously that hugging and stuff, and eventually they got in the car and drove away.
Okay. Did you see them also kissing?
Yes.
Okay. And what was she wearing?
She was wearing like a light color,
So a room.
like a light colored dress. I don't remember like the pattern or the color.
Okay. And approximately how many minutes were you observing the two of them for as she was going through the clothing and the bags?
Well, together, less than 10 minutes.
Okay. When they drove away, did you see where the defendant got into the vehicle?
She got into the right rear seat. It was the F-150 is one of those crew cabs or four-door pickups, so she's not seated right behind the driver, but to the right of that in the back seat.
Okay. And Baker got in then to the driver's seat?
Yes.
Did you see where they drove to?
Yeah, they just drove out and they drove south on Independence Crossing to the south side of Van Owen. And on that would be the southwest corner, there's a very big parking lot. I don't know what that's to. They drove into that parking lot and drove to the south of the lot.
So basically across the street?
Diagonally across the street, yes.
And was this a parking lot that was also well lit or not so?
That was not well lit.
Okay. It's sort of a big open lot?
A very big open lot, yes.
Okay, Your Honor, I have a photograph of the corner of Van Owen and Independence, I believe it is, at 21010 Van Owen. May it be marked as People's 189.
Amen.
Thank you. Showing you Exhibit 189. Do you recognize what you see here?
Yes, I do.
And what does this depict?
And that's the lot that I saw them pull into when Mr. Baker was driving. The Sementilli was in the back seat.
Okay. And looking at the location where there is a red marker with an arrow, is that the gas station that you initially made your observations at?
That's the gas station, yes.
And then you said the defendant got into the back seat and Baker drove over to this this parking lot area?
That's correct. Where that red blob is, the car was further up on the screen and a little to the left. But yeah, that's the whole lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when Baker drove into this area, into this parking lot, did he park somewhere?
Yeah, it's very towards the south end. I don't know if he was all the way at the end, but nearly so if he wasn't.
Okay. And what did you see, if anything, happen at that location?
I couldn't see anything going on in the car. I know they just stayed in the car, but at that point, Detective David Frederick, that's Fredrich, he put out over the radio that he could see what was going on. So at that point, although I could see him in my rearview mirror, I couldn't see any details, so I let David Frederick call it at that point.
Okay, so you passed off the targets to him at that point?
Yes.
Okay. And at that point, did he begin making observations and calling out?
Yes.
Observations, yes. Calling out, no.
Did he call out what he was observing?
Something to the effect they were kissing or making out in the
Okay.
car.
All right, so you were not in a position to be able to see what they were doing at that point, correct?
No.
At some point, did you follow them to another location?
Yes.
And where was that?
It's the Goodnight Bar on Burbank Boulevard.
Okay. Is that located at 10721 Burbank?
That's correct.
All right, and approximately what time did they arrive at that location? Approximately.
Maybe close to 8 o'clock. I'm not sure the exact time, but that's fairly close.
And did you see them enter the location?
Yes, and leave the location.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you see them, what time they exited approximately?
They weren't there very long, but I don't remember exactly how long they were there.
Okay. And what observations did you make, if any, when they left the location?
I can't remember now if it was when going in or coming out or both, but holding hands.
Okay. And were you in a position where you were watching the location?
I could see the front of the location, yes.
Your Honor, I have two exterior photographs of this location. May it be marked as People's 190?
Yes.
Showing you People's 190. Do you recognize what you see here?
Yeah, that's the location that they went in and out of.
Okay. And you said this is in, this was on Burbank Boulevard. Is this in the North Hollywood area?
Yeah, I think that's North Hollywood. I'm not that good with the valley where it breaks up, but yeah, I believe that's correct.
Okay. And at some point, did you follow them to another location?
Yes.
And where was that?
Objection, at this point, relevance and cumulative.
Overruled.
They went to the Laugh Factory. I think it's 8001 Sunset Boulevard, Hollywood area.
Your Honor, I made a photograph of the exterior and interior of this location. If it could be marked as People's 191, please.
Yes.
Did you set up at the perimeter?
Yeah, I didn't have eyes on the location, but I was covering what we call the winds, or you set up covering a route that they may take, east, west, north, south.
Okay.
I don't know which.
In order to be in a position to follow.
Yes.
Okay. Showing you Exhibit 191. Is this the location of the Laugh Factory on Sunset Boulevard in Los Angeles?
So that is the Laugh Factory that they went to.
Okay. And did you stay at this location until the end of your watch that night?
Yeah, I think we stayed until approximately 10 p.m.
Okay. And they did not leave before that time, correct?
No, we left them there.
Okay. On the date of June 14th of 2017, were you asked to be a part of, again, a surveillance operation that was going to end in the arrest of these two targets
Yes.
by Robbery Homicide Division detectives?
Yes.
So at about 1:20 in the afternoon, did you observe Robert Baker somewhere?
Yeah, he arrived at the Queen Victoria address in the in Miss Sementilli's black Ford Mustang.
Okay. Is that a new vehicle at this point in time?
New to us, yes.
You hadn't seen it before. You had
I-
been advised or informed about the black Ford
Your
F-150.
Honor, the prosecutor is testifying, and this is all reading.
It was a compound question. Sustained on that ground. Overruled on others.
You indicated you had previously been informed of the black Ford F-150 that we looked at in the other photographs, right?
Yes.
But not Ford Mustang.
No, on the March 9th, I had no knowledge of this Mustang.
Okay. Showing you People's 64. Is this, these photographs that we see in People's 64 depict the vehicle that you saw Baker driving over to the defendant's home on Queen Victoria?
Yes.
And did you see where Baker pulled in?
Just saw him drive onto the property and out of my view. I can't see when he's on the property what's happening.
When you say on the property into the driveway area?
Yeah, I'm trying to recall exactly how it was, but I think I'm parked south of location looking north, so I'm only seeing things that drive in and out, but I can't see what's happened on the property.
And a few minutes later, did you see the Ford Mustang drive away from the Queen Victoria location?
Yes.
Okay. And did you see whether or not the defendant was in the passenger seat at that point?
I couldn't see that.
Okay. Were you informed that Baker had picked up the defendant and that she was now in the front passenger by another member of the team?
Yes.
Rule.
And then did you follow them to the location of a traffic stop by Robbery Homicide Division detectives around 1:30?
I did. I didn't see the stop, but was hearing the traffic on the radio.
Okay, thank you. I have nothing further.
That's my cross.
Thank you. Good morning, Detective.
Good morning.
Former detective, retired detective.
Thank you.
Detective Guzman, the observations you testified to earlier, they were all recorded on video on March 9, correct?
I'm only aware of the gas station activity being recorded on video.
That was the activity that you personally observed, correct?
Yes, from a different angle, that video matches up what I saw, yes.
And in fact, you testified before a grand jury about the observations you made in the petrol gas station parking lot on March 9?
Yes, I don't know if I knew that it was a petrol gas station, but it was a gas station.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
And at the grand jury, Ms. Silverman actually showed you a video that depicted accurately the events that you observed, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And on March 9, 2017, which I guess now is about 8 years ago, you observed Robert Baker carrying shopping bags, 2 shopping bags across the parking lot entrance. Is that correct?
From his apartment south and then crossing over to the gas station, yes.
Okay. And I think you testified earlier that at least one of those shopping bags you identified with something, store name Quicksilver on it?
And it was Quicksilver. I don't know if I read the name or recognized the logo, but it was Quicksilver.
Fair enough. Showing you what will be marked as...
Let's start with that first.
Please, yes.
What is it you wish to have marked?
Please, if I may, as Defense 618, I think is next in order.
It is next. What is it, please?
It is a 5-page document of gas station surveillance camera stills from a video from March 9, 2017, beginning at 7/19/49.
So marked.
Thank you. Showing you page 1 of Defense 618. Do you recognize that, Detective Guzman?
That was the approximate angle that the surveillance video that was shown was, where they met, where Mr. Baker and Ms. Sementilli met.
Okay. And when you described earlier seeing Ms. Sementilli in the Ford 150 truck, do you see the truck in this screen capture?
I'm assuming this is the same video that I saw, but it's kind of grainy, but that looks like where the truck is parked. I just can't identify that truck and say that's one of many trucks. Yeah.
Understood. And showing you, if I think you have a pointer there.
Yes.
Okay. If you could show us, when you described seeing Mr. Baker walking across the parking lot and towards the truck with those bags, do you see him there?
Yes.
Okay, can you point
I see better on my monitor, but I do see it better.
Okay, can you point him out?
I can't even tell if that's him or her at this point. But,
Okay.
Yeah.
But you see someone walking towards the truck with bags?
Yes.
And when you described the bags earlier, the one you say was Quicksilver, that's the light colored bag?
I don't know which of the bags.
Okay.
There was 2 bags and one was Quicksilver.
No problem. Showing you page 2 of the Exhibit 618. You testified earlier that you observed Miss Sementilli get out of the driver's side of the truck and walk around towards the passenger side where she met Mr. Baker?
Yeah, I do. I don't remember if she walked in front of the truck or behind, but I think it would have been behind.
And they met up, and she started removing clothes from the bags that he had brought her?
Removing them and holding them up to her as if trying them on for size, kind of like imagine what they look like on her.
Okay. And she then pulled out different items from the bags?
I don't know if it was all of them, but at least a couple of items. It may have been more, but that's what I remember.
Okay.
Yeah.
And showing you page 2 of 618, does this accurately represent a portion of what you observed yourself?
That looks like it would be taken from the video, a still of the video, yes.
Okay. And showing you page 3, another shot from 7/21/24. It appears Ms. Sementilli is holding up some kind of dress with Mr. Baker.
I can't even tell what she's doing from this. It's too grainy for me to really see what she's doing, but that's what she did that day, so that's probably what this is.
Okay. And it looks like some kind of item of clothing she's holding up?
I can't tell what she's holding up from this still. It's too grainy for me.
Okay. And then you described that you subsequently saw Ms. Sementilli get in the back passenger seat of the truck, correct?
Yes.
And showing you page 5, I realize it's very grainy. You sort of see
I see her arm on the door as if to get in the car. Is that what you're saying? Yes.
Yes, and that's the back passenger seat you described earlier that you saw Ms. Sementilli enter, correct?
Yes.
And then you saw Mr. Baker driving Ms. Sementilli's truck away?
Yes.
And that evening, you then did a handoff at that point to your partner who observed the subsequent events in the second parking lot, is that correct?
Yes, although I had a distant view from my side mirror, I could just tell they were in the car and didn't get out, but I couldn't see what was going on. He was a lot closer and could make better observations.
And in the course of your surveillance, I believe you testified earlier, and I just want to make sure, there were other times that you located the F-150 being driven by Mr. Baker?
I don't know that I testified to that, but I believe that night he was driving the F-150 to each location. To the best of my knowledge, I wasn't watching or have eyes on the whole time, and somebody may have put out that she was driving, but I don't remember that happening.
Okay. But on June 14th, when you were conducting surveillance, you did observe Mr. Baker alone driving a Mustang that was identified as belonging to Ms. Sementilli, correct?
Yes, and previously I was talking about the F-150, but yes, on the June 14th, Mr. Baker was driving the Mustang.
Thank you, Detective.
Thank you.
Anything further by the people?
No, thank you.
Thank you, Detective Guzman. You are excused.
Thank you.
You may call the next witness.
Thank you.
And for the record, say spell your first and last name, please.
Corbin Rowe, Corbin. My last name is Rheault.
Thank you. Sir, can you please tell us how it is that you're employed?
I serve as a detective for the Los Angeles Police Department,
And where are you assigned?
Robbery Homicide Division.
What is your assignment at robbery homicide?
My current assignment is I'm the training coordinator for the division.
Okay. How many years have you been employed now by the LAPD?
It'll be 29 years in June.
Okay. What does being in charge of the training coordinator for robbery homicide mean?
I ensure all the detectives assigned to the division meet the standards and protocols that are subscribed by the California Police Officers Standards and Training.
And do you also run schools regarding undercover work?
I do. I coordinate and lead and train the department's undercover school.
Okay. Were you previously assigned to an undercover section based out of RHD?
Yes,
And what section is that?
that's the Special Investigation Section.
How many years were you assigned to SIS?
Approximately 13 years.
Okay. And during that period of time, did you work in an undercover capacity?
I did.
Okay. How many years have you been assigned to RHD, homicide?
I spent 2 years at Homicide Special Section before being assigned to the Special Investigation Section.
Did you also work for the cold case homicide section?
I did.
How many years were you assigned there?
Approximately just under 2 years.
Okay. And did you also previously work as a narcotics agent?
I did. I served as a special agent for the California Department of Justice.
I want to direct your attention back to either late on the night of Tuesday, March 7th or early Wednesday, March 8th. Did you have conversations with Detective Chris Gable and Barry Tellis, who were assigned to the Homicide Special Section at RHD at that time?
Sorry, counsel, I didn't hear the year.
March of 2017.
Thank you.
What did I say? Okay.
Yes, I did.
Thank you, Your Honor. And did they request that you, along with other individuals from SIS, conduct a surveillance, an undercover surveillance operation on a couple targets?
Yes.
And who were those individuals?
Robert Baker and Monica Sementilli.
Do you see the defendant, Monica Sementilli, here in court today?
I do.
Can you identify her, please?
She's seated to the left of defense counsel. She's wearing a tan blazer and a maroon blouse.
So indicating.
Thank you. Does she look much different today than she did back in
So ruled.
March of 2017?
Significantly different.
Showing you People's 14. Do you recognize the individual that you see here?
I do.
And who is that?
That's Robert Baker.
Is he one of the two individuals that you just discussed you were asked to target for surveillance?
That's correct.
All right. Were you also provided with vehicle information?
Yes.
And were you provided with vehicle information for Baker?
Yes.
What was that?
It was a black Ford Expedition.
And were you also supplied with vehicle information for the defendant?
Yes.
And what was that?
A black Ford F-150.
Okay. During the course of the surveillance operation, did you observe either or both of these vehicles?
Yes.
Which?
Saw the black Ford Expedition on occasion and the black Ford F-150 on occasion.
Showing you People's 141. Do you recognize what you see in these photographs?
Yes.
And looking at the license plate 85645N1, did you identify that as the license plate for this vehicle?
Yes.
Showing you People's 142, do you recognize the vehicle and plates that you see here?
Yes.
And with respect to the license plate in the bottom right corner, 6VYZ263, is that a license plate that previously was used on this particular vehicle belonging to Robert Baker, the Ford Expedition?
That's correct.
All right. Were you also provided with residence locations for each of the targets?
Yes.
And what were those locations?
For Monica Sementilli, it was 5012 Queen Victoria Road
In
And-
Woodland Hills?
in Woodland Hills neighborhood of the city of Los Angeles.
Okay. And what about for Mr. Baker?
Mr. Baker, it was 6817 Independence Avenue, apartment 110 in the Canoga Park neighborhood of Los Angeles.
What was the approximate distance between those two locations, if you know?
Depending on what route that you took, 4 to 5 miles.
Okay. On the date of Thursday, March 9th of 2017, did your unit begin surveillance operations on the defendant and Mr. Baker?
Yes.
And prior to the surveillance operation, did your team have a briefing that day at 2 o'clock?
Yes.
All right. And were you informed that and did you go to a location where a tracker was installed on the defendant's Ford F-150?
Yes.
And where did that take place?
That was adjacent to the Laugh Factory comedy store off of Sunset Boulevard in the Hollywood area of Los Angeles.
Okay. Were you on the perimeter at that particular location that night?
I was present at the surveillance on the perimeter, although I did not witness the tracking device being installed.
Okay. And the next day, on Friday, March 10th of 2017, at about 2 in the afternoon, again, did your unit conduct a briefing regarding the surveillance operation for that day?
Yes.
Okay. And did you locate Baker's Ford F-150 that day, you or someone in your unit?
It was actually Baker's Ford Expedition.
Sorry, Ford Expedition. Thank you. Was that around 3 in the afternoon?
Yes.
Okay. And did you follow him in his Ford Expedition to a particular location?
The surveillance did.
Okay. Did you follow to a location as well?
Yes.
Okay, where to?
It was a strip mall off of Ventura Boulevard near Penfield, and there's a Ralph's there and also a Asian food restaurant.
Okay. Is there also a Starbucks in that particular strip mall and a Vons?
That was earlier, yes. He was first at a Starbucks before he went to the Ralph's.
Now, at some point, did you make observations regarding the defendant on that same date near that location?
When he was near the Starbucks?
The defendant.
I'm sorry, yes.
And where was that?
I observed her in her black F-150 get gas at a 76 gas station that was near the northwest corner of Penfield and Ventura.
Okay. And was that the same location where Baker had been observed just a short time prior?
That's correct.
Okay. And that was near also the Ralph's Market?
Yes.
Okay. And at that point, did you follow the defendant somewhere?
She left from the Union 76 gas station, but my partner and I did not follow her.
Okay. At some point, did you observe either or both the defendant and Baker park near the Ralph's in that strip mall?
I learned that they did, but I did not make that observation. Okay. I learned it was reported on the radio that we use.
Okay. At some point in time, was it reported to you that both the defendant and Baker met up in the parking lot behind the Ralph's?
Your Honor, I would object. Calls for hearsay.
Explains what this is substantive conduct. It's overruled.
Go ahead.
Yes.
And is that located at 20060 Ventura Boulevard?
Yes, I believe so.
Was that at some time after, maybe at 6:15 that night?
Yes.
A little after 6? Okay. And at some point in time, was it also reported to you that both the defendant and Baker left from the parking lot behind that Ralph's in her Ford F-150?
Yes.
And who was driving at that point in time?
I don't recall.
Okay. Do you have notes with you?
I do.
Can you identify those or look through your notes and see if that refreshes your recollection?
I can.
Thank you. Let me know when you've had an opportunity to do that.
Okay.
Were you able to refresh your recollection?
Yes.
And who was driving the Ford F-150 that night?
Robert Baker.
Okay. And do you know where they drove to?
I would have to check my notes again.
Okay, could you do that?
Okay.
Did that refresh your recollection?
They went back, yes.
Where did they travel?
They went back to the Queen Victoria residence.
The two of them together in her Ford F-150?
Yes.
Okay. Leaving his vehicle then in the parking lot of the Ralph's?
Correct.
Okay. I want to move on to Monday, June 5th of 2017 at about 9 in the morning. Once again, did your team have a briefing that day regarding
Yes.
the surveillance operation to take place on the defendant and Baker?
Yes.
Okay. And at some point later that morning, did you set up on the Queen Victoria location?
Yes.
Approximately what time is that?
I don't recall.
Okay. At some point in time, did you observe the defendant leave the location driving a new vehicle?
I did not make that observation, but I learned that she was.
Okay. At some point, did you see her driving to that same, did you ever see her driving that vehicle, the new vehicle, the Ford Mustang, to the Ralph's location?
No.
Okay. At about 4:20 in the afternoon, did you go to the location at 6817 Independence, the location we discussed earlier where Robert Baker resided?
Yes.
Okay. Showing you Exhibit 188. Do you recognize the apartment building in the photograph on the left?
I do.
And at some point in time, did you go into this underground parking location?
Yes.
And what was your purpose?
To surreptitiously place a tracking device on Robert Baker's black Ford Expedition.
And if we look at the photograph to the right, does that appear to be the interior of the parking garage? And I believe, is this his vehicle here, the black Ford F-150?
Yes.
Okay. Is that, I'm sorry, I said it again, the black Ford Expedition, did he, is this the vehicle onto which you placed the tracker?
That's correct.
Okay. What's the purpose of the tracker?
Two purposes, but specifically, generally, trackers are used for two purposes. One is to find the location of the vehicle when you're not physically surveilling the car. Where was that vehicle at? And the route of travel it took and how long it stayed at a particular location. For this particular case, we use the tracking device as a locator to find out where the vehicle is at so that our surveillance would be more effective and efficient. And the reason for that is if we check known locations for the suspect and his vehicle was not there, we would have no other locations to check. So having a tracking device on the vehicle puts us generally in the direction of the suspect as quickly as possible.
And does that tracker also allow you, through an accompanying program, to track where the vehicle goes when you're not surveilling?
That's correct.
All right. Your Honor, I have another set of 3 photographs of the defendant. May they be marked as People's 192?
Yes.
Showing you Exhibit 192. looking at the photograph in the center, do you recognize this location?
Yes, that appears to be the underground parking garage at 6817 Independence Avenue.
Your Honor, again, we would renew the objection based on relevance of these photographs.
I've ruled on this earlier. My ruling remains.
Thank you, Your Honor.
I have nothing further.
Ms. Burke.
Detective, am I correct that you have, as a part of your extensive work with SIS and surveillance operations, you also have the ability to place listening devices when you're placing tracking devices to secure warrant?
No?
You've never placed a listening device?
Like an overhear listening device?
Yes.
No.
Okay. And you made no application for doing so in this case, correct?
Correct.
And in your surveillance that you were discussing earlier, you actually only participated in a very limited number of actual physical surveillance in this matter, correct?
Please let me think and I can count the number of days.
Of course.
4 days of surveillance, and then the 5th day was the arrest.
And how did you record your own personal observations in the case?
I didn't record personal observations, but there's a unit note taker. And in this particular case, it was Detective Robert Krause, would take notes of what was observed and repeated over the radio.
Okay. So, and how did you relay your observations about what you personally saw?
If I made a significant observation during surveillance, I would repeat that observation over the radio so that all the people on the surveillance could hear it.
So am I correct, when you were reviewing notes earlier, are those your personal notes or not?
No, those are Robert Krause's notes that are taken for the unit for the surveillance that day.
Okay, but these are observations you're saying you made 8 years ago?
Well, it could be a little less than 8 years.
Let's say 7.5, okay? And you didn't record anything you saw yourself by writing it down, correct?
That's correct.
You didn't prepare any reports about your observations?
No.
Okay. So when you're talking about observing Ms. Sementilli in a basement in, when was it? When in the People's Exhibit that they just showed you, I believe it's 192, photographs of her posing in what looks to be a parking lot. When did you observe that?
I didn't testify that I observed that. I believe I was asked, do I recognize the background? And I do. It's consistent with the underground parking garage of 6817 Independence Avenue.
So you never, Detective, observed at any time Ms. Sementilli in these outfits being photographed?
No.
And can you tell us on what days your 4 days of participation in surveillance were?
This has all occurred in 2017. I believe it was March 9th, March 10th, March 5th, or excuse me, June 5th and June 6th.
Okay, and where did you observe Ms. Sementilli on March 9th?
I don't believe I observed her on March 9th. My observation of Ms. Sementilli would have been on March 10th when she was at the Union 76 gas station at Penfield and Ventura.
Okay. So you didn't make any observations at any time during March 9 of Ms. Sementilli?
No, I think at various times during the surveillance, I may have been behind her vehicle, but it was not a significant observation. It was merely watching the vehicle travel from point A to point B. It's not unless something significant. If they stop, if they have a conversation with somebody, things like that.
Okay. And how long did you follow Ms. Sementilli on March 9?
Me personally,
Uh-huh.
I don't recall the duration. The whole surveillance, I'd have to check the notes on how long we conducted surveillance that day, cumulatively as a team, but I don't track how long I'm behind her vehicle or vehicles that she may be in. We don't track that.
Okay. But at no point in whatever you were participating in on March 9 did you ever see her outside of the vehicle?
I don't remember if I saw her outside the vehicle personally.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Anything further by the people?
Yes, briefly. In terms of a listening device, that would be a wiretap, correct?
That would be my understanding.
Okay. And in order to obtain a wiretap on somebody's phone, you would have to write a search warrant, correct?
A wiretap application, yes.
And a judge would sign off on that.
That's correct.
Your team never did any of that on this case.
That's correct.
In fact, you don't have any knowledge of any wiretaps in this particular case, do you?
Correct.
No. Okay. In terms of the documentation, when you were answering questions regarding the unit note takers, you explained to us that when SIS conducts a surveillance operation, that the point person is passed off depending on the location of each of the individuals in your team and the direction the targets travel.
That's correct.
And various individuals on the team will call out, as you explained on direct, over the radio as they're making their observations so that the rest of you can put yourself in a particular location.
Correct.
All right. And the unit note taker, in this case, Detective Krause, he would be the person responsible for writing down the observations made by everybody that is a part of the surveillance op that day.
That's correct. And it's not a transcription of what occurred, but rather the significant events that were observed.
Okay. And in terms of that note-taking, that would be notes that are made and documented as to who the individual is calling out that particular observation, correct?
That's correct.
As well as the time and location,
That's correct.
as the point is handed off between members of the surveillance team.
Yes.
So the individual that's making the observation, their name would be documented, even though you're not the one that is writing down the notes, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything further?
No, thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Detective Rowe. You are excused.
And for the record, say and spell your first and last name, please.
Ernest Valorano III, ERNEST VALLORANO.
Thank you. Mr. Valorano, did you know somebody by the name of Fabio Sementilli?
Yes, I did.
And who was Fabio Sementilli to you?
Very good friend.
Back in 2017, would you have considered him to be your closest friend?
Yes.
Just looking for a photograph that's previously been marked. I believe 73. I believe so. Showing you what's been previously marked as people 73. Do you recognize the individuals in this photograph?
Yes, I did. Fabio, his two daughters, with Luigi, his son.
You knew his entire family?
Yes, I did.
And who introduced you to Fabio?
We had a mutual friend by the name of Nick Berardi. who I knew from New York.
And was Nick someone who had moved to the Los Angeles area?
Yes.
And did you previously live in New York?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And Nick, where did he work? Did he work for Wella, the
I
same
think
company?
Nick was an independent contractor for Wella.
Okay. And at some point, he introduced you to Fabio?
That's correct.
And what year was that?
Ooh, let's see. I think it must have been around. I moved to LA from China actually in 2012. So it was probably a few years later that I got in touch with Nick and then met Fabio.
So approximately how many years had you known Fabio at the time of his death?
Probably 3 to 4 years.
Okay. And at that point in time, were you living in the Woodland Hills area back when you first met Fabio?
Yes, I had rented a house in Woodland Hills.
And was there a group of you that formed a close bond? You, Nick, Fabio, and a couple other gentlemen?
Yes.
Did Fabio introduce you to another individual?
I think the way I was introduced to the group was Nick Berardi introduced me to Fabio Sementilli, and then Nick also introduced me to Diego Raviglione.
Okay.
And then Fabio, we became fast friends, and then I met his family.
Okay. And Diego was also somebody that was working with Fabio at Wella at the time?
Yes.
All right. And did you speak to him almost on a daily basis, if not every other day?
We spoke a lot.
All right. And did the two of you often get together?
Yes, we were at each other's houses quite often.
Sometimes would he call you on his way home?
Yeah,
from
just call me on the way home. You want to come by for a drink, or I'd call him. We met a lot.
And where did you typically hang out, the two of you?
Either at my house or his house.
And if you were at his house, where would you and he typically hang out?
On his back patio. He would be in his favorite chair, and I would sit across from him.
Showing you what's been previously marked as People's 9, page 20.
Yes.
You recognize this location?
Sure, that's his patio, and to the right, the closest chair to the right, that's Fabio's chair.
Okay. So you would sit across from him and the two of you would sit outside?
Either on the red cushion or directly across.
And the two of you would sit out there and smoke cigars and
Yes,
talk?
have a drink, smoke cigars, and talk.
And did the two of you also socialize together with your families?
Yes, we did.
So did Fabio know your wife?
Yes,
And did you know his?
yes,
Do you see her here in court today?
yes. Monica's wearing a beige jacket.
And did Fabio often talk about his family with you?
Oh, yeah.
Was that something that was extremely important to him?
Very important to him.
And did you also meet his extended family from Canada?
Yes, I did. On Monica's side and Fabio's side.
Okay. And did he also meet your family?
Yes, he did. My
And-
mother loved him,
Your mother loved him?
for sure.
And-
He reminded her of her oldest brother. He would come in and give her a big hug and, "Hey, Jeannie, how you doing?" And she just melted.
And did you also meet his mother before she passed?
Yes, I did.
Sustain.
At some point in time, did you also meet Fabio's sisters, Morella and Lori?
Yes, I did.
And did you often spend holidays with Fabio and his family?
Yes, I did.
At some point in towards the beginning of January of 2016, a year prior to his death, did the two of you travel together?
Oh yeah, we went on a golf trip together.
Okay. And was there something that he would do every night after dinner?
Yes, after we had finished playing golf, we would have a drink, and he'd rush to his room to FaceTime with his wife and kids.
Did he ever say anything to you or mention anything to you about whether he suspected his wife of having an affair? Did he ever mention anything like that?
Not in those words, but he issue of trust came up, and he made a statement that you can't trust anybody but your mother.
And did you go with Fabio to purchase a vehicle that he was buying himself before his 50th birthday?
Yes, I did. His Porsche.
And were you and Fabio and a number of close friends planning a golf trip for his birthday that was coming up to several golf courses in California, like Pebble Beach?
Yeah, it was, yes, I did. I think there were 8 of us invited.
And did you, along with the others, receive an email from Fabio about paying Monica for this upcoming birthday trip?
Yes.
And did you, in fact, pay Monica a certain amount of money for this trip?
Yes.
How much money was that, if you recall?
I think it was around $3,000. So.
Each?
Yes, well, yes.
Okay. Did you ever get to go on that trip?
No.
Did the defendant ever return the money to you?
No.
The weekend before Fabio was killed, that would have been January 21st and 22nd of 2017. Did you receive a call from Fabio?
Yes, I did.
And did you go over to his house to help him with something?
Yes, to repair, I think it was a power washer he had just bought.
Okay. And did the two of you go somewhere to try and fix this, get this power washer fixed?
Well, actually, that day we tried to fix it right in his driveway.
Were you successful?
And we got it to run.
Okay. And did the two of you go somewhere?
That day...
Did you drive somewhere in his Porsche to Manhattan Beach?
Oh, yes, that's right. We went. I introduced him to a mechanic that I trusted to service his Porsche and check it out for him.
Okay. And at some point in time on that weekend, did you see the defendant?
Yes, I did.
It's overruled.
That weekend while you were at the house, did you ever see the defendant?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And can you describe the relationship that you commonly saw between them? Did it appear that they had a good relationship? What did you notice?
Yes. It seemed like a very loving family.
Okay. Did you see anything between the defendant and Fabio that weekend that you thought was odd? Looking back now.
Yes. Yes, I did.
And what was that?
While we were repairing the power washer, Monica came out. It was around noontime, I remember. And Monica came out and had made sandwiches for us, which I thought was great. So she gave us a sandwich. I was all happy. And Fabio didn't seem happy. He kind of ignored her.
Seemed like there was maybe something going on between them to you?
Meeting calls for speculation.
Sustain on both.
Did it seem to you that they weren't themselves, or at least that Fabio wasn't himself?
Same objection.
Sustained.
By the way, with respect to Fabio's Porsche, was he somebody who was letting everybody drive his vehicle?
Oh, no. He actually told me the only two people who drove it were myself and one time Monica. He wanted her to drive it.
So you don't suspect that Fabio would have let any of...
Not at all, no.
Objection calls for speculation.
Sustained.
After that particular weekend, did you leave to go on a trip with your wife to London?
Yes, I did the next morning.
All right. And when you landed in London, did you receive news about Fabio's death?
Yes, I did.
And did you call the defendant to talk to her about what had happened?
Yes, I did.
After you returned, did you cut your trip short because of this?
I tried to, but Monica said that it was going to happen right away. I couldn't get back in time.
That what was going to happen right away?
That they would be having the funeral right away.
Okay. Once you got home, did you try to help Monica?
Oh, yes. I
Did you speak to her on a regular basis?
Yes, I tried to, yes.
Approximately how often? Every couple
I was
days?
checking in, 2 or 3 times a week for sure.
And did you also go to the home on Queen Victoria every week?
Yes, I did.
More than once a week?
It's hard to recollect, but I think it seemed like I did, yes.
Okay. Were you at the home when the police came on February 21st, 2017 to interview her?
Yes.
And did you often go to the home to help her fix things that she needed?
Yeah, I was there to check in on her and make sure she was okay.
Did you also have her and the girls over to your house for pizza?
Yes.
And when she came to your house, did she generally come with the girls and leave with the girls, or not?
I remember one incident really distinctly. She left without the girls.
Okay. Did the defendant ever tell you that she was going on trips to Las Vegas?
No.
Did she ever tell you she was going on a trip to Myrtle Beach?
Objection, irrelevant,
It's overruled.
and calls for speculation and hearsay.
Overruled on those grounds as well.
Did she?
No.
She ever tell you that she was seeing someone?
Oh, no.
She ever tell you that she had been seeing somebody for over a year?
No.
After Fabio's murder, was there a central issue that the defendant would bring up with you on a regular basis?
Just that the insurance money wasn't coming in fast enough.
And was that something that she complained to you about often?
When I contacted her, yes. That because I would ask, did you hear anything? And no.
And was that was that something she brought up with you?
Objection, misstates the evidence,
So
asked
ruled.
and answered.
I'm sorry, repeat that?
You wouldn't know to bring it up with her if she didn't bring it up to you, correct?
Your Honor, she's testified you brought it up with her.
I'm sorry, ma'am. I already ruled on this.
Thank you, Your Honor.
That's,
Go ahead.
Yeah, she would bring it up or I would bring it up. It was a big topic.
For her.
Yes.
And did she tell you that she was running out of money and was going to need to sell the house?
She was very worried about money, yes.
Okay. And so because she complained to you about money, what did you do, if anything, to try and help her?
Well, I think,
Did you offer her a job?
yes, I did.
Okay. And you were also in the beauty industry, correct?
Yes, I had a company
Okay.
in the beauty industry.
And did you offer her a job in the beauty industry?
Yes.
Okay. And was that because you were worried about her, given the fact that she kept complaining about being worried about money?
Your Honor, I would object to leading
Sustained.
argument.
Why did you offer her a job?
So she could have a way to support herself and her kids.
Okay. And what, if anything, did she say when you made her this offer of a job?
She said she needed to think about it.
She ever take you up on your offer?
No.
She ever tell you that she didn't know how she was going to survive without Fabio's money?
Yes, she said she didn't know how she was going to survive.
Did you, at any time, did she tell you that she was actually receiving Fabio's full salary for 6 months?
No.
Did you and Fabio ever talk about money?
Sure.
Did Fabio ever talk to you about the fact that he collected Bitcoin?
Yes, he was one of the first people who was speaking about Bitcoin and encouraging me to start investing in it.
Did you ever take Fabio to buy Bitcoin?
Ye-
I'll allow it.
yes, I did.
And approximately how much Bitcoin did he purchase that particular date?
That day, I distinctly remember he purchased $500 worth of Bitcoin from a vending machine on Laurel Canyon Ave that was in place at the time.
And did Fabio indicate to you that he was investing every month in Bitcoin?
Yes, he did.
Because of that, when the defendant was complaining about having money issues, did you talk to her about Fabio's Bitcoin?
Yes, I did.
And what did she say, if anything, in response?
She said, I remember her saying that she knows about it, like she knew about it.
Okay. After Fabio's death, did the defendant ask for your help in selling his Porsche that you helped him buy?
Yes, she did.
Did she tell you why she needed you to sell the Porsche?
She said it was a bad memory for her and she didn't want it around.
Did she tell you that she also needed the money fast?
Yes, she did.
And did you obtain an offer for the Porsche?
Yes, I actually spoke to 3 prospective buyers.
And what happened?
Well, the one buyer, actually what happened was the auto shop in Manhattan Beach that I took Fabio to and was friendly with the owner. I told him what happened because he had met Fabio, and I told him, look, his widow needs to sell this car as quickly as possible. Do you know any buyers? And he has a big network in the Porsche community. So he made a few phone calls, and like a day or two later, he called me back. He said, there's a sports newscaster who I sent the pictures of the car. He's really interested, but he's away for 2 weeks. And when he gets back, he would like to buy it.
Okay. And did he make an offer on the vehicle?
Yes, he did. Yeah.
And what happened when you communicated that offer to the defendant?
Well, because as that offer was there, we also received an offer from the place that the car was purchased from.
Eurolux?
Yes.
And was that offer higher or lower?
It was about $15,000 lower.
And what happened?
Monica elected to sell the car to the Eurolux to get the transaction done quickly.
So she gave up the $15,000 higher offer to go with a...
I believe this is testimony and not a question.
I'll take your objection under submission. You may finish your question.
She gave up the $15,000 higher offer for the lower offer because it was quicker?
Sustained. Let me take our morning recess now.
Thank you. I think when we ended before the break, we were talking about the offers that you relayed to the defendant. Did she eventually sell Fabio's Porsche back?
Yes, she did.
Okay. And that was for the lower offer, is that right?
Yes, and I had, I was trying to say to her, well, if we wait 2 weeks, you'll get more money. But she was pretty set on selling it.
Okay. Did she subsequently purchase a new vehicle for herself?
I don't recall, but I guess she did, yeah.
Well, did you ever see the Mustang?
No, because prior to that, I was a little stunned because Fabio.
Sustained.
You weren't aware that she purchased a Mustang?
No.
Is that what you're saying? Did you and Fabio often go with Nick and Diego to car shows and things like that?
Every year.
Sustained.
Did you also attend the Wella Memorial in Woodland Hills on May 22nd of 2017 for Fabio?
Overruled.
Yes, I did.
All right. And when you were at the memorial on May 22nd, were you present when the defendant gave a speech and sang "My Way"?
Objection, reading.
So I'll allow this.
Yes, I did.
All right. Did she appear to be in mourning by the time of the May memorial?
Objection, calls for speculation.
Sustained.
Did she appear to you to be somebody who was still grieving the loss of her husband from what you observed?
Sustained.
Calls for sex.
Did you see the defendant crying or anything of that nature?
Objection, relevant.
It's overruled.
Calls for speculation.
Overruled.
What I saw was what seemed like a performance of My Way,
Okay.
which left me a little, sent a chill up my spine, actually.
Non-responsive.
Sustained.
Did you also attend the funeral and the catered luncheon in Canada at the beginning of February in 2017?
Objection, relevant.
It's overruled.
Yes, I did.
You and your wife flew up to Canada.
Yes, we did.
At some points after that, did you learn about the defendant's arrest?
Yes, I did.
And after her arrest, did you still try to maintain a relationship with Fabio's daughters?
Yes.
Sustained.
Did you, prior to his death, have a relationship with the defendant's brother-in-law, Grant Larson?
Yes.
Was he someone that you and Fabio played golf with?
We should make an offer of proof at sidebar, counsel. Proceed.
Thank you. Again, the relationship between you, the defendant's brother-in-law, Grant Larson, Fabio, did the three of you often get together, play golf, things of that nature?
Yes. Whenever Grant was in town, Fabio and I would meet up with him. We'd play golf. We'd have lunch, drinks. We were together a lot.
Okay. And did you also have various conversations with him and the defendant's sister after the defendant was arrested for Fabio's murder?
Yes, I did.
Relevance.
And did you and Grant and the defendant's sister often discuss, subsequent to her arrest, the fact that everybody was aware she was, at that point, had been having an affair?
Objection, relevant.
Counsel, I wish you to get to the point that we talked about at sidebar, please.
All right. At some point in time, did Grant come into town after the murder and come by to your house for drinks?
Yes, he did.
And did he, when he came to your home, was he with his wife, the defendant's sister?
Yes, Anna.
Okay. And did you go out to the front of the home to greet him?
Yes.
Overruled.
Yes, he buzzed the front gate, and I opened my front door, and I went out to meet them.
Okay. And was Anna on the phone at that point in time?
Yes, Anna was on the phone. I didn't know she was coming. I thought it was just Grant and I getting together, that he was in town, we were going to have some drinks and smoke a cigar, but what happened was that Anna was walking behind him on the phone, and she said, "Ernie, there's someone that wants to say hello to you," and she handed me the phone, and it was Monica from jail, and she said, "Oh, when this is all over, we'll get back together again."
The defendant said that to you.
Yes, Monica.
Were you shocked?
Yes.
Wait one moment.
Oh,
Calls for speculation and or
Actually, so on those grounds, it is irrelevant.
Okay. Would it be safe to say that that was the last time you spoke to Grant and Anna?
yes, that was the last time.
I have nothing further.
Thank you. Mr. Valorano, am I correct that you and Fabio were extremely close as
Yeah.
friends?
I thought so, yes.
And is it fair to say that you have continued to be extremely close with Fabio's sister, Morella?
We hardly talk, so ever since the murder, nobody's been talking to anybody, really.
So you haven't spoken to her? And
No, I mean, I feel close for her. I love their family. Both, it's a really hard situation when you feel for the people that you knew, Grant and Anna, and also both sides of the family. My heart was bleeding for everyone.
Yes, yes. When was the last time you spoke with Morella Rota?
Probably today.
Okay.
Yeah.
And before today, when was the last time you spoke to her?
So irrelevant.
Before today?
Yes, sir.
I don't remember talking to her, actually, for the longest of time.
Okay. Do you ever remember talking to her between Fabio's death and now?
Probably maybe 2 times.
Okay. Okay. Am I correct that you had, when you spoke to the police back in 2017, you mentioned something about a business that Morella was involved in?
When I spoke to about Morella?
Uh-huh.
Are you referring to PhD, my company?
Yes.
Okay. Fabio suggested that there was an opportunity in brushes and combs, and he said, "Look, you have an opportunity if you can design this line." He goes, "Why don't you talk to Morella about it?" And he did a 3-way call, and she came on the phone, and we asked her, "What do you think about this?" I don't remember, the details, but what do you think about this brush, and what the length should be, and what would you use it for, and things of that nature.
And did you ever pursue that business?
I made prototypes, yes.
Okay. And when was that?
I'll allow it.
When did I make the prototypes?
Yes. When did you start the business? You started the business?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
It was a registered business. I actually was doing it for probably right around the time I met Fabio, actually, because
Okay.
I did sell to Wella. Yeah.
And he was your partner?
Partner? No.
Yeah. It wasn't any piece of the business was not
No,
involved
it's
Fabio?
100% mine.
Okay.
Yes.
And you never involved Morella in the PhD business at all?
No, outside of that one phone call, no.
Okay. And did you ever involve Monica in that business or discuss doing that business with Monica?
Only after Fabio was murdered.
Okay. And I think you testified earlier that at some point you had offered her a job?
Yes.
And
Well,
when-
I offered her that position to take that company and develop it.
So when you say take that company, what did you offer her, if I may ask?
To come, at the time, I had in my warehouse, I told her I could set up an office for her in the warehouse, and she can manage that business.
Okay. And when did you make that offer to her?
It was sometime before she was arrested. I don't remember the exact month or time.
I think at the time you said that you had discussed a job offer with her close to when she was arrested?
Yeah, before she was arrested.
Okay.
Correct.
That would have been late May or early June?
I guess so, yes.
And she never said no, correct?
She did not say no.
Okay.
She said she'd think about it.
Terrific. Okay, thanks. You spoke earlier, Mr. Valorano, about going with Fabio Sementilli to a vending machine
Yeah.
in the valley
Mm-hmm.
and buying $500 worth of Bitcoin.
He
correct?
did.
He did.
Yes.
Okay. Am I correct? You never saw any wallet that Fabio had or
No.
had
I
any
wish-
access to?
At the time, it wasn't so, like, I didn't know about wallets and keys, and you need to have a safety, I didn't know about it. He was the one who was telling me about it. And I remember pulling into the parking lot. He got out and he went to the machine and he purchased $500 worth of Bitcoins. And he told me he does it every month.
Okay. But you never saw any Bitcoin wallet
No,
or balance
no.
that had more than $500 in it, correct?
No, I did not.
Okay. And you never had any conversation with Monica indicating at all that she was aware of a wallet address or how to access Bitcoin, correct?
I said to her that, Fabi was buying these Bitcoins. Make sure do you know about them? Can you access it? And yeah, and now it's hazy. I know she said I think I got it. Like, she knew about it.
Meaning awareness that he had bought some Bitcoin.
Yes.
Okay. But nothing about her having access to his wallet, his digital wallet.
Not specifically. No, I don't remember that.
And you're aware, are you not, that in order to actually access Bitcoin or benefit from it in any way, you actually have to have a very specific wallet address? And
Yes, now I'm aware. Now I am.
Okay.
At the time, I didn't know. There was no Coinbase or one of these places that you could easily purchase and sell. It was very early on, and Bitcoin was a few $1,000s, I think, a coin at that time.
Yes.
Yes.
But that was the only experience you had
Yes,
with
I
Fabio.
didn't know about it.
I just wanted to make sure that we were clear.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Valorano, you spoke about traveling with Fabio to Thailand on a golf trip.
Yes.
And you had taken other golf trips with him as well?
Locally, not overseas. That was our first time that we actually did a boys' trip just to play golf.
And that was just you and Fabio, correct?
Just the two of us.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you spoke earlier, and I think you mentioned when you spoke to the police back in 2017 that Fabio was not a guy who went out and partied. In fact, on this trip, he would go home every night to the hotel and FaceTime or Skype with Monica, correct?
100%. He was a fun-loving guy, but he was really family-oriented. And right after dinner, he'd rush back. He'd be looking at the clock to see when the time, because there's I think a 14-hour difference then at that. And he would go back and say, I got a FaceTime every night.
And you said that he would share intimate stuff about his relationship and life, correct?
Yes, especially family life. Yes.
And you, I think back in 2017 at least, you described that he told you he was happy and that Monica was very dedicated. Is that right?
I don't know if he said those particular words, but if you looked at them, it looked like an ideal. I mean, that's why we got along so well. You know, I was in a happy marriage. It looked like he was in a happy marriage. He loved his kids. We talked about their futures and helping them, and it was all about loving family.
I think you said at the time that if Fabio had any kind of trouble in his relationship, he would have talked to you about it.
I want to believe that if he specifically knew, I would hope he would, and that I could talk to him about it. But if he just suspected, I doubt he would, because he was a kind of I think he was a good judge of character, but it took a while. Like, when I first met him, I didn't do business with him for a long time. He would make sure you were a dependable person and somebody he'd want to do business with. It was just social with us for the first year or two.
Got it. But at no time did he ever mention or say to you that he was unhappy with Monica or complained about Monica in any way?
No, that's why that one night in Thailand, when he said you can't, and if you knew Fabio, to hear a statement like that after seeing the way their relationship was, to say to me, you know, you can't trust your wife, you can only trust your mother, that really bothered me, and it didn't hit me, and it made me think about it like for a long time afterwards.
It really hit you, but you didn't follow up with any questions, correct?
No, because right after he said that, he got up and went to do the Skype or whatever it was with his family.
With Monica?
Yes.
And you never mentioned it again to him?
No, I didn't.
Okay. And when you socialized with them after you got back from Thailand, you went over to each other's houses,
yes.
correct? And you had an opportunity to observe Monica, correct?
Yes, I did.
And everything you observed was loving and attentive to Fabio, correct?
After his murder, you mean?
No, before.
Before, yes.
Yes.
Yes, for sure.
And-
Just that one time with the sandwich, that was the only time I ever seen him act like they might have had a fight the night before or something was off. But prior to that, never.
And when was that?
That was I guess it was the day before he was murdered, because I left that morning while he was murdered. I was in the air. So it had to be the day or the day before, 2 days before.
So that would have been Saturday, January 21st, 2017?
Yes, right around then.
Okay.
That was the only time I saw something that looked like they weren't getting along.
Okay, but I think you described earlier that she made sandwiches for the two
That's
of you?
the time I'm talking about.
Yes.
I accepted it gladly, but he didn't. He just like it was weird. She had to put it down, and he just ignored her. Like it wasn't the normal reaction that you would see from Fabio.
Okay, I'm confused. Are you saying he didn't eat the sandwiches?
No, he didn't eat the sandwich. I ate mine. He just left his there.
Okay.
And then we went, I ate it, and then we fixed it, and that was it.
Okay. I'm a little confused, Mr. Vallerano. You spoke to the LAPD. You were, in fact, interviewed.
Yes.
Were you not, on the 21st of February, about a month later,
Yes, I was
correct?
there, yes.
Okay. And you described to them specifically about the power washer that Fabio had bought, correct? And that he'd asked you over to the house to fix the power washer, correct?
Correct.
And you came over to fix the power washer, and you thought it was really nice that Monica had made sandwiches
did.
and brought them out.
I did.
But nowhere in there did you ever describe this incident you're testifying about today, where you say that she brought out the sandwiches and Fabio looked upset. Correct?
That's true. And when he asked me, I was shocked. I was a little appalled that he I remember distinctively, he said, do you know if Fabio had an affair? And I said, no, he would never. And he said, do you know if Fabio suspected Monica of having an affair? And I was kind of upset that he even asked me that. I said, no way. I would have never believed that she was, capable of that.
Okay.
That would have happened.
Okay. Mr. Valorano, am I correct that at the same time you spoke to the police and you were actually interviewed yet again, correct? You spoke to a Detective Roberts and a couple of DAs at some point?
I don't recall that, but I guess I did. I remember there might have been one phone call after that initial meeting in person.
Okay. Well, let me go back to this 50th birthday golf trip that you spoke of earlier. Okay. Fabio had told you specifically, I think you mentioned in at least a couple of your interviews, that Fabio had told you that Monica was planning his 50th, which would have been in July, correct?
He did. He said that Monica was going to arrange a townhouse for all of us, and that she was going to, I don't know, I kind of remember that she would we'd be able to play twice a day and have lunch, and it sounded great.
Okay. So when Ms. Silverman asked you earlier if you and the friends were planning the trip, you very specifically recalled back in 2021 and 2017 that your understanding was Monica was planning this trip
For Fabio.
Objection, assumes facts, not evidence.
It's overruled.
Is that correct?
Say it again?
That your understanding was very specifically that it was Monica who was planning the trip and had found the townhouse and...
Yeah, she was involved, you're right. But they both, I guess they both planned it because he's talking to me about it.
And back in 2017 and again in 2021, you very specifically remembered that it was Monica, after Fabio died, who approached you and offered to give the money you had contributed back and that you had declined.
Yes, I remember we were in her kitchen and she brought it up. She said, oh, you paid for this trip, take the money back. And there was no way I was going to take the money back from her when, I didn't know if she had any income coming in, or it just didn't seem right. So I said, don't worry about it, don't worry about it. And that was the last I spoke of it.
Understood. If we could touch on the Porsche for a minute. I think you testified earlier that you assisted Fabio Sementilli in buying the Porsche.
Yes.
And that was in anticipation of his 50th birthday. He wanted to buy a toy, I think you had at one point said.
Yeah, I don't know if I use that word toy, but I had been buying and selling Porsches for a while, and sometimes on the way to the golf course we would switch cars. And I'd say he had a really nice BMW at the time, and he said, let's switch cars. And I would drive his car, he would drive mine, and then he started to fall in love with the Porsche car. So he was like, oh, I think I want to get one. So then I would introduce him to certain people. I think at the time we were trading info on cars that were for sale, and that's how it happened.
And he was actually at first considering a different car. He was considering the Camaro, which was coming out in a year, and the
Z1.
Mustang.
Not the Mustang. I specifically remember him saying he doesn't like the Mustang. At the car show with Nick and Diego, Fabio loved to have his photo taken in everywhere we went. Like if we were riding bicycles,
Right.
he'd say, "Ern, take a photo here." So at the car show, I liked the Mustang. I said, "Fabio, this is kind of cool." He said, "No, I don't like it, the new Mustang. I want to look in the Z1." And I think I even had a photo of him. You know, he made me take a picture in the Camaro and also the Chrysler. I don't know the name, Demon or whatever that big Chrysler car is. And he made me take pictures in both of them.
Okay, so when you told the police in February of 21 that Fabio was deciding at first between a Mustang and a Camaro, that wasn't what he was looking at?
I don't
You said you
remember.
test drove him?
He test drove the Camaro, not the Mustang. I don't recall the Mustang being in the conversation.
Okay. Would it refresh your recollection to read the transcript of your
Sure.
recorded statement?
Sure.
Showing you
What I said?
page 110 and 111.
I need lots. Oh, good. It's big.
Yeah, it's
big
big.
enough. Okay.
Directing you to
Here?
111.
It was between a Camaro. He wanted the Camaro.
Right. And the Ford. He bought our Mustang. He liked the Ford.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Oh, but didn't he buy his daughter the Mustang? Or I remember didn't one of the kids have a Mustang?
Yeah.
Yeah, for them he liked it, but not for him.
Okay.
I think that was it.
Okay, but when you referred to the detective saying he liked the Ford, you just had forgotten that he
Yeah, I
was...
probably,
Understood.
it wasn't specific, so.
Understood. And when you bought the Porsche, helped him buy the Porsche, am I
Right.
correct? He financed a large part of the car. He made a down payment and then financed the rest.
I don't recall that. We went, and I wasn't in on the actual negotiation. I was outside looking at the cars, and when he decided he was going to buy it.
Okay, so when you told the police that you helped Fabio negotiate the price,
Oh yeah, with the salesman, yeah. But I didn't go into that sales managers to do. Or maybe I did sit in on it, but I don't recall numbers, or that was quite a while ago.
okay, but you do recall when you helped Monica sell the Porsche
Oh yeah.
that there was a significant amount of money that had to be paid on the financing, to pay off the finance company, correct?
I don't recall that, but if you're telling me, yeah, I don't remember.
Well, isn't it true that you took care of the arrangements for selling the Porsche with Eurolux, where the car had originally been purchased?
That is correct. I remember calling up the sales manager because the sales manager at the time told Fabio, this is a really good deal. If you don't want the car after a year, I'll buy it back at the same price. He said that. But after I went to sell the car for Monica, he wasn't exactly holding true to those words, but we tried to get the best price possible.
Okay. And you ended up negotiating the price with him, and
Yes.
it was for $60,000 even, correct?
Is that right? I don't remember the amounts. I'm sorry, but I don't remember the amounts. It's been a long time ago, and I'm in business, and numbers are every day in my head that I wouldn't recall the exact amount.
Okay. Would it refresh your recollection to see your texts
Sure.
and attachments of the checks that were paid to the finance company
Sure,
and
sure.
to Monica?
Please.
Okay. So, if I may, Your Honor, mark,
It is not
I
to be
can,
marked.
I can show it to him first and see if it refreshes. May I approach and show you something to see if it refreshes your recollection? Thank you. Am I correct that?
I object to it. If it doesn't refresh his recollection, that's the end of the question.
I don't know what the question is, but you may ask your question.
I'm not going to remember the exact amount. I know. Sorry.
Is it fair to say in the negotiation that you conducted with Eurolux
Okay.
that the negotiation included paying off what was owed on the car and the balance being returned to Monica?
Yes, if that was the structure, for sure.
And if I told you that the amount owed to the finance company was $44,000 of the $60,000, does that sound like what occurred when you negotiated?
Objection.
Sorry?
He said he does not.
I understand. It's an improper question.
Do you have an understanding of what was owed on the vehicle
I'm
at
not.
all?
Objection, Your Honor.
Yeah.
It's been asked and answered.
It has been asked and answered.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. I'll move on. Mr. Valerano, am I correct that when you went to the, well, first of all, let me ask you, Ms. Silverman asked you a number of questions about whether you were aware that Ms. Sementilli had traveled to Las Vegas. Do you recall her asking you that?
That's
Just-
irrelevant.
You asked it. It's overruled.
No, I mean whether he recalls it.
It's overruled.
Yes.
But you didn't have any understanding with Monica Sementilli that she would be reporting to you where she was traveling, correct?
No.
Objection, argument.
Is that no?
Yes.
And Mr. Valerano, am I correct that you attended the memorial at Wella
Yes.
in May of 2017?
I did.
And you interacted with both Monica Sementilli and her daughters?
What do you mean interacted?
You saw
Oh, I
all
saw
three
them
of
there. Yes, of course.
And in fact, when Monica was on stage, her daughters, Jessica and Bella, were up there with her when you testified earlier they were singing My Way, correct?
I'm going to object. That seems facts, not an evidence.
It's overruled.
As to the daughter.
So what was the question?
The daughters, Jessica
Oh,
and
was
Bella.
it on the stage?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, nothing further.
Anything further, other people?
Couple, Your Honor. Me too.
You declined to take money from the defendant because she had been telling you that she was strapped for cash after Fabio's death.
Objection, leading.
Sustained.
Why did you decline to take back your money for the birthday trip that never happened?
Objection, irrelevant.
It's overruled.
I wouldn't take back money from her when she was telling me that she didn't know how she was going to buy, groceries, or she was strapped. So
She told you she didn't know how she was going to buy groceries?
she didn't know how she was going to live on. It was a really bad time for me too. Here I am, like trying. My heart's bleeding for these people, and I
It is not responsible.
You didn't want to take money back from her, you're saying, because she was telling you that she was...
yeah, I thought she needed money, so I didn't want to take the money back.
Because she was Fabio's wife,
Yes.
and it was his wife and children.
Objection, leading.
Sustained.
You felt like you owed it to Fabio to help
Right,
his
for
wife and
Fabio.
children?
Argumentative.
Go ahead.
That's sustained.
Why did you feel the need to constantly be calling the defendant, coming over to help her with things around the house,
Since
offering
my-
her jobs,
It's overruled.
things of that nature? Why?
It's my best friend's wife and his kids, and he was murdered, and she was, you know, at the time I just thought she's distraught. She doesn't know what she's going to do. She doesn't know how she's going to live. The insurance money wasn't coming in. It was a terrible time, and there's no way I could, you know, ask, oh, please pay me back in this, why this is happening to you. There's no way. I wouldn't do it for Fabio, and for the kids, and
Well-
for her at the time too.
When you say at the time, that changed over time. Once you learned about the affair,
Well, that
Sustained.
you said that when law enforcement asked you if Fabio ever suspected his wife of having an affair, that you were offended by that.
Objection, in this case, the evidence irrelevant and to the extent asked and answered.
Excuse me. That's overruled on all grounds.
Isn't that what they asked you?
yes.
And you said?
Yes, I was offended.
Okay.
I
And-
remember going home like pissed. I was really offended that he was questioning my friend and also Monica. It was beyond my comprehension that this could have been, you know, what he was saying. And I remember my cousin is a detective.
That part is.
Because in your mind, from, again, as what was asked of you on cross, you believed that they had a committed, loving marriage.
Relevant calls for speculation.
That's
Wrong-
what,
argument.
I'm sorry, wrong grounds, counsel. But it
That's-
is cumulative, and I'm sustaining the objection as to that. Let's
Oh.
move on.
well, I want to redirect as to what was asked on cross, Your Honor. So I'm assuming that when law enforcement was asking you these questions, you didn't have any thought in your head that perhaps the defendant had been having an affair behind Fabio's back.
No way.
Cumulative.
No, it's overruled.
No way I thought that.
No way. And when you learned that the defendant had been arrested for his murder with her lover, that again, would that have been something you never would have thought of when the police were interviewing you in
I
February?
was devastated. I couldn't
One moment,
believe it.
sir. What's the objection?
Irrelevant.
Sustained.
Argumentative.
You never suspected during the time that you were rendering aid to the defendant that she might have been involved in her husband's murder.
Objection, irrelevant.
Sustained.
I have nothing further.
Anything further?
No, thank you. Your Honor.
Thank you. Mr. O'Reilly. You are excused. May proceed.
Thank you. Detective Rowe, did you text detectives Byers and Farrell and me after you got back to your office
Email.
after testifying this morning?
It was an email.
An email, sorry. And that there was something that you testified to this morning that you realized was incorrect.
That's correct.
Can you tell us what that was, please?
I believe I testified that after the defendant and Robert Baker met up at the Ralph's,
On which day was that?
March 10th, a little bit after 6 p.m. in the evening, I believe I testified that Baker, Robert Baker, drove the F-150 back up to the Queen Victoria Road residence. And when I looked at the notes more closely, I think I mixed that up. The notes indicated that it was the number 2 suspect, and the number 2 suspect corresponds with the defendant.
Okay, so the defendant's the one that drove Baker back in her Ford F-150 from that Ralph's location parking lot back to her home on Queen Victoria on March 10th.
That's correct.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
Yes, and to be clear, I did not make that observation. That observation was made by Detective Montoya.
Which was relayed to you, as we discussed this morning.
Over the radio, yes.
Thank you.
No, thank you, Ron.
Thank you, Detective Rowe.
And for the record, say and spell your first and last name, please.
Hello, my name is Jane Kwan. Janekwon.
Thank you. Ms. Kwan, can you tell us how it is that you're employed, please?
I am currently employed by the Los Angeles Police Department in the Forensic Science Division.
And what is your position there?
I am a criminalist.
Okay. How many years have you been employed there as a criminalist?
It will be 12 years in August.
And where are you assigned currently at the lab?
I'm currently assigned to the Quality Assurance Unit.
What does the Quality Assurance Unit do?
Quality Assurance Unit is a team of criminalists, and we basically oversee the quality system of the laboratory. It involves a lot of auditing and reviewing to make sure that the work produced by the laboratory is technically sound and in compliance with the accreditation and laboratory policies and procedures.
And that is because, as you just mentioned, the LAPD's crime lab is an accredited lab, right?
That is correct.
What does it mean to be an accredited laboratory?
LAPD Crime Laboratory is an accredited laboratory in the testing and calibration program. We have undergone voluntary third-party auditing program, and it involves making sure that the lab follows all the standards within ISO document 17025 and AI 3125.
Okay, you just rattled off a bunch of letters and numbers. So for people who don't know what ISO or 725 or any of that stuff means, what is that?
So basically, it's a very numerous and very voluminous standards to make sure that we as a laboratory meet every one of those criteria. And by saying that LAPD Crime Laboratory is an accredited laboratory, we are saying that we have met all those requirements listed in those documents.
Okay. So the laboratory has standard operating procedures, protocols, standards that are in place in order to meet the accreditation standard by outside third-party accreditation board, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so that means that people such as yourself have to review the work of other criminalists in the lab. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct.
Okay. And in order to be an accredited lab, is there also, besides the quality assurance measures that you're talking about as part of the accreditation standards, does that also require that the criminalists within the lab in the various sections have to meet certain standards and are subject to proficiency testing on a regular basis?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And how many years have you been in the quality assurance section?
About 6 years, since 2019.
Prior to being assigned to the quality assurance unit, where were you previously assigned?
I was assigned to the Field Investigation Unit.
What is the Field Investigation Unit?
Field Investigation Unit is a unit where the primary duties is to respond to crime scenes and vehicle searches to identify and collect document evidence.
And approximately how many crime scenes would you say that you processed during your time in the Field Investigation Unit?
235.
Approximately, wow, that's precise. I didn't expect that. How many vehicles?
That I would have to get back to you.
Okay. I'm assuming more than a couple.
Oh, yes.
Okay. And how many years were you assigned to the Field Investigation Unit?
I was hired in 2013, and I was in Field Investigation Unit until 2019.
So approximately 6 years.
Yes.
And did you undergo some training before you were allowed to process crime scenes and vehicles?
Yes.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
The training is approximately 1 year long. Basically, it involves reading, taking tests, and actually working with the senior criminalists. I successfully completed the training program, and at the end, I also took a competency test, which I successfully completed.
Okay. And were you also subject to proficiency testing on a regular basis?
After I became competent, annually I also took proficiency tests to make sure that I was proficient and I was doing following the protocols.
Okay. And did you know back in 2017 when you were assigned to the Field Investigation Unit, did you know and work with someone by the name of Corey Hawk?
Yes, ma'am.
And have you also testified multiple times as an expert regarding crime scene investigation and evidence collection?
Yes.
All right. In 2017, specifically on January 27th of 2017, were you asked to process a vehicle that was a 2008 black Porsche 911 at a tow yard?
Yes.
And was that the black Porsche that is, or was, belonged to the victim in this case, Fabio Sementilli?
Yes.
And when you went to this tow yard, was that the Howard Summers tow yard off of Deering?
Yes.
And did you process that vehicle in the presence of LAPD detectives Gene Parshall and Ryan Verna?
Yes.
And prior to even processing the vehicle, did you discuss with them what the investigation to that point was so that you would have some idea as to what to be looking for?
Yes, I received initial information that was known at the time so I can do the search that I need to do.
And when you were processing the vehicle, did you also do so in conjunction with a laboratory photographer?
Yes.
Okay. And did you direct her to take overall photographs of what you were doing?
Yes.
And is that something that was, again, standard protocol when you either processed a crime scene or a vehicle?
Yes.
So let me interrupt you.
Yes.
Take our lunch and recess at this time. We'll be in recess until 1:30.
Ms. Kwan, when we broke off for lunch, we were talking about the processing of victim Fabio Sementilli's black Porsche on January 27th of 2017, showing you what's been previously marked as People's 36. Is this the vehicle that you processed on that date at Howard Summers Tow?
Yes.
Same one that we see here in Exhibit 37?
Yes.
What did you notice about the windshield of this particular vehicle?
I noticed that on the front windshield there was a paper licensing attached to it.
Is that what we see here to the right photograph in Exhibit 37?
Yes, ma'am.
And showing you People's 38, again, are these photographs that were taken at the time of processing by the photographer that came out?
Yes.
And so there's no license plate on the vehicle?
There was no license plate.
What did you notice about the condition of the vehicle in terms of the windows and things of that nature?
The front left and the front right windows were rolled all the way up, and then the rear ones were rolled down.
Okay. Was there any key anywhere in the ignition or in the vehicle itself?
There was no key.
Okay. Now, when you process a vehicle or a crime scene such as this, is there a protocol, a standard contamination protocol that you follow?
Yes.
Tell us about that, if you would.
To prevent cross-contamination, I use personal protective equipment. And what that is, essentially, I wear gloves and masks, and I also tie my hair back.
Okay. And how do you go about collecting samples from, let's say, the interior of a vehicle such as this?
So first, I would document the vehicle as is, and I will use flashlight and naked eyes to visualize to see if there's any biological evidence. Then I would use a PID number, which is just a number placed next to the stain to highlight the evidence items, and I will work with the photographer to photograph that.
When you say PID number, what does PID stand for, please?
PID stands for photograph identification.
Okay. And do the PID numbers sometimes correspond with an evidence item number?
Yes.
Okay. And when you collect evidence, do you document in notes that you're taking simultaneously where you're collecting a particular swab from?
Yes.
Along with the date, time, things of that nature?
That's correct.
All right. And then do you also fill out a property report to identify the swabs or samples collected?
Yes, so PID number is a number system that I use at the vehicle searches or crime scenes, and property item gets assigned later at the laboratory when the evidence is ready for long-term storage.
In terms of the property evidence items, when you collect items and then subsequently book those samples into property, do you book them under the unique DR number for the case?
Yes.
And in this case, any evidence that you collected, did you book it under the DR number for LAPD's case 17-21-05194?
Yes.
Do you know who Randy Zepeda is?
Yes.
Who is he?
He is a DNA analyst assigned to the DNA serology unit.
Okay. And was he also assigned to the DNA serology unit back in 2017 at the time that you collected evidence in this case?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. In terms of collecting evidence, did you collect items, as you mentioned, you looked with a flashlight, from not just areas where you could potentially see stains, but also from areas that would be likely to have DNA?
Yes.
Okay. So those would be, can you explain that to us, like what type of areas that would be?
So the areas that would be normally touched, such as door handles, they could have trace amount of DNA deposit onto them. So I cannot visibly see the DNA that could be on the surface, but I did my biological evidence processing to potentially collect for those types of evidence.
Okay. Now, in terms of your collection, in addition to, as we just discussed, areas where you might have seen possible potential biological material, where there was red stains, did you also use some type of a chemical test to aid you in determining which areas to collect from?
Yes.
Tell us about that, if you would.
There's a chemical screening tool. It's a presumptive tool that we use for blood search. And it is a color indicator, and I basically take a small sample of the stain in question, apply the chemical, and to see if it has a reaction. A positive reaction, the chemical turns from a clear color to a very bright color, indicating a positive result.
Did you also use a particular system
to identify the locations where you had a positive chemical reaction for, let's say, blood?
Could you repeat the question?
Sure. Did you also use some type of color coding system
To identify the areas where you obtained a positive notation for biological materials such as blood?
Yes.
How did you go about doing that?
So when I identified a stain that I would like to test, I placed a red sticker next to the stain. And once I applied the chemical and obtained the results, I applied a blue sticker on top of the red sticker when I received a positive reaction.
And did you also make a diagram where you included your notes as you collected samples from various areas inside of the vehicle that we see here in People's Exhibits 36 through 38?
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, I have two diagrams of the exterior and interior of the Porsche. If this document could be marked as People's 193, please.
Yes.
Showing you Exhibit 193. Do you recognize what you see here? Let's start with the one on the left.
Yes, that is page 6 of the notes that I generated that day.
Okay. And looking to the right, the diagram on the right, does this show the interior of the Porsche where you have identified the areas from which you collected samples?
Yes.
And they appear to be yellow numbers.
Yes.
What do they represent?
Those represent the PID numbers.
So the photo identification number.
Yes.
I actually have a set of photographs that relate to Exhibit 193. There are 11, including the diagrams. May I have them also collectively marked as People's 193? They have individual numbers in the lower left-hand corner.
All right, you wish to add that as part of 193, so
Yes.
so marked.
Showing you 193, the diagrams was 193, and in the bottom left corner there is a number 7. Now I'm going to show you 193 that has a 12 in the left-hand corner. Did you begin your collection in the driver's compartment?
I started with the driver compartment, yes.
Okay. Does this show us the interior of the driver's side door?
Yes.
And did you see stains in this particular area on the driver's door?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Showing you what's been marked now as 193 that has a 13 in the bottom left corner. This appears to be the same interior driver's door, but now we see that there are PID numbers 11, 12, and 13. I assume this is 11 behind the driver's door handle.
Yes.
And what did you document here with respect to these 3 areas?
I documented the placements of the stains that I was to test and will collect.
Okay. And as you mentioned earlier, you used colored stickers, a red sticker and a blue sticker. Those are areas where you believed you saw biological evidence?
Yes.
That you could see with the naked eye?
Yes, I saw stains.
And you used that, as you told us, a presumptive chemical test?
Yes.
Okay. And that was used to identify potential biological material?
Yes.
Given that we see that there is a blue sticker on top of the red, does that mean that in each of those 3 areas
the phenolphthalein test or the chemical test tested positive for biological evidence such as blood.
They tested positive.
Okay. Showing you 193 that has a 14 in the bottom, looking at your placard number or your PID number 11, what do we see here?
There was a red stain in the dripboard-like pattern on the front left driver's side interior panel, and what you see in the picture is PID number 11, close-up view of it, and you also see my sticker, the red sticker and the blue sticker, to indicate the results of that stain.
Is this a stain that we see here, as I'm indicated in the bottom right photograph and also in the top left photograph that appears to be vertical in nature?
Yes.
Looking at 193 that has a 17 in the bottom left corner. Can you tell us what area we're looking at here?
This is the front left seat, and on the seat side of it there are seat controls, and the lever had red stain.
Is that the red stain area that we can see here that I'm pointing to with respect to the seat control?
Yes.
And again, was that an area that tested positive for blood?
Yes.
Looking at exhibit 193 that has an 18 in the bottom corner. Again, looking at the interior of the driver's door. Actually, this is the, once you're inside the seat, this would be the driver's side seat controls.
Yes.
And again, we see the red sticker with the blue sticker, meaning that this was an area that tested positive for blood.
Yes, it tested positive using the phenolphthalein test.
Okay. And this is the same area where we see the red staining in the photograph to the bottom right that I'm pointing to?
Yes.
What about the steering wheel? What did you note with respect to the steering wheel?
There was also a stain on the steering wheel.
Showing you exhibit 193 that has a 15 in the bottom left corner. Again, this is the steering wheel area.
Yes.
Showing you 193 that has a 16 in the bottom left corner. This area here, where again we see the red and the blue sticker. Is this the area from which you collected a stain?
Yes.
And if we look at the photograph to the right, that would be this area here that I'm pointing to, just above your red sticker,
Yes, ma'am.
where you have an arrow pointing on the red sticker.
Yes.
And what did you notice with respect to the clutch?
There was a stain on the clutch pedal.
Did you initially in your notes indicate this was a brake pedal?
Yes.
And then you subsequently made a correction and identified it as a clutch?
Yes.
Okay. Looking at 193 with a 19 in the bottom left corner, which of these pedals are we talking about?
The one on the left.
Okay. Showing you exhibit 193 that has a 20 in the bottom left corner. Looking at the pedal to the left where you have a placard with a number 23. Again, looking at your stickers, is this the area with the arrow pointing to the location where you saw that red stain?
Yes.
Did you also communicate with criminalists within the lab who are charged with making diagrams?
I contacted architectural drafting technician,
Was that Alan Perez and at that time Maria Catango?
Maria Contengo.
Okay. Showing you exhibit 193 that has an 8 in the bottom left corner. Is this the diagram that represented the various areas where you collected stains and where biological material was found?
Yes.
When you went through the collection process, how did you go about collecting swabs from each location?
Wearing personal protective equipment to avoid cross-contamination. I also used sterile swabs and sterile water in collection to protect the quality of the evidence. It is essentially like a giant Q-tip. I apply sterile water, and then I apply that moistened swab to the stain or the area of interest.
So, all in all, how many swabs did you collect from the interior, the driver's compartment, and the passenger compartment of this vehicle?
There are a total of 23 swabs collected.
Okay. And when you told us about how you used a Q-tip with sterile water to collect these items, did you use a different Q-tip? It's like a long Q-tip, right?
Yes.
From each area?
Yes.
All right. And then did you package them separately into separate bindles?
Yes.
Subsequently, did you fill out a property report with respect to those 23 swabs that you collected, numbering them numbers 44 through 66?
Yes.
In terms of the architectural diagrams that were created in the lab, did those, you reviewed those and they were accurate with respect to what you collected?
Yes.
Now I want to turn to June 15th of 2017. Did you also process a 2000 Black Ford Expedition belonging to an individual by the name of Robert Baker under license plate D584G0?
Yes.
Your Honor, I have a series of 16 sets of photographs regarding this vehicle. May they be marked collectively as People's 194, and again, they have numbers in the bottom left corner.
Yes.
Thank you. And where did your processing of this particular vehicle take place?
It took place in our laboratory, one of the vehicle bays.
Okay. And was a robbery homicide detective, Detective Carlos Camacho, present?
Yes.
Once again, did you work with a photographer from the crime lab or the forensic science division?
Yes.
Showing you what's been marked as Exhibit 194. This one has a 3 in the bottom left corner. Is this the vehicle that you processed on June 15th at the crime lab, 2017?
Yes.
Showing you Exhibit 194 that has a 4 in the bottom left corner. Again, is that the same vehicle?
Yes.
And is that also the same vehicle that we see in 194 that has a 5 in the bottom left corner?
Yes.
And did you recover various items from the interior of this vehicle?
Yes.
Showing you Exhibit 194 that has an 8 in the bottom left corner. Did you recover a black Targus bag with miscellaneous personal and electronic items from the second row?
Yes.
And did that also include a racquetball bag, several rackets, and racquetball related items?
The racquetball bag was on the second row seat.
Okay. Showing you Exhibit 194 that has a 9 in the bottom lower corner. Are these the items that you recovered from the second row area?
Those are the items that I found at this vehicle search.
Again, from the second row seat behind the driver?
They're the items inside the vehicle and also the items found in the second row seat, yes.
Okay. Showing you Exhibit 194 that has a 10 in the bottom lower corner. Again, are these some of the items that you recovered from the second row floor space?
Some of those were recovered by me, and the items were found in the target's bag that was found on the second row floor space.
And the items that weren't recovered by you, you had another criminalist that you were working with that day?
Could you repeat the question?
The items that weren't recovered by you, were those recovered by another criminalist that was working with you that day?
Yes.
Okay. And they were recovered in your presence?
Yes.
Okay. Showing you Exhibit 194 that has a 14 in the bottom left corner. Did you also recover several memory cards from the vehicle?
Yes.
And did you itemize those as items 150 through 157 under PID 14?
May I refer to my notes?
Sure.
PID 14 and its contents were booked as items 150 to 157.
Okay. Showing you Exhibit 194 that has a 19 in the lower left corner. Is this the item, a memory card? It looks like a SanDisk 32 gigabyte memory card that you booked as item 157 in this case.
May I refer to my notes again?
Yes.
Yes, that's correct.
And the writing on the envelope that we see here in the bottom left corner, is that your writing?
Yes.
Okay. And is that the envelope into which you booked items 154 through 157 as we see written below the DR number?
Yes.
Okay. Showing you 194 that has a 16 in the bottom left corner. Is this another memory card, item 151 under PID 14?
Yes.
Did you also collect items from the third row of this vehicle?
May I refer to my notes?
Sure.
I swapped for touch DNA in the third row.
Did you collect items from the third row? Let me show you Exhibit 194. It has a 20 in the bottom left corner.
Your Honor, could she answer the previous question?
Does this
Actually, I will allow the question to be asked.
Does this assist you with respect to the items that were recovered from the third row?
Those items were not recovered, they were photo documented.
Okay, they were photo documented.
Yes.
Okay, my mistake. And these were items, though, that you did find, find in the third row, correct?
Yes.
Question leading.
I I found the black luggage and its contents in the third row, but I did not recover them. I photo documented them.
Okay. You took them out.
Yes.
You laid them out as we see here in this photo.
Yes.
And then you had the photographer from the crime lab photo them.
Yes.
And then you put them all back in?
Yes.
Okay. Showing you Exhibit 194, number 21, page 21. Again, are these items that you took out of the third row area for photo documentation as we see here?
Yes.
In addition to the items that we see in 194 that has a 24 in the bottom left corner.
Yes.
And with respect to the items that were found in the third row, did it also include miscellaneous clothing that appeared to be from a woman?
Yes.
Okay. Such as underwear and things of that nature?
Yes.
Did you also find various personal items such as condoms in the third row?
Yes.
Showing you Exhibit 194 that has a 25 in the lower left corner. Again, is this another photograph taken to photo document those same items we've been talking about?
Yes, ma'am.
Was there also a receipt found amongst those items?
Yes.
Showing you Exhibit 194. It has a 26 in the bottom left corner. Appears to be a receipt of a place called Eden Sky on Melrose, dated April 21st, 2017, at 6:05 at night.
Yes.
Showing you Exhibit 194 that has a 22 in the lower left corner. Were these items that, again, you photo documented that were contained in a some kind of an Eddie Bauer bag?
Yes, this was a photograph to show the third row seat area, and the one on the bottom left is the Eddie Bauer bag.
Okay. Showing you Exhibit 194 that has a 23 in the bottom left corner. Again, is this a photograph of the items that were removed from the floor space?
Yes.
In this particular vehicle, did you have a key in the ignition unlike the Porsche?
Yes.
Okay. And did you note anything about the windows of this particular vehicle?
The windows were tinted and they were rolled all the way up.
I'm sorry?
They were tinted and they were also rolled all the way up.
Okay. Did you find any foreign currency in the vehicle?
I did not.
Any phones, cell phones,
I did not.
knives,
I did not.
hoodies?
I did not.
Again, with respect to all of the evidence or any of the items that you did collect from in the interior of this vehicle, did you, such as the memory cards, did you package and book those items under the same DR that we spoke of with respect to Fabio Sementilli's Porsche?
Yes.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Mr. Babich.
Good afternoon, Ms. Quad.
Hello.
You're processing the Porsche on January 27th, 2017, and then processing the Ford Expedition on June 15, or was it June 15 or June 14th?
June 15th.
June 15th. That was the extent of your role in this matter, correct?
I processed the two vehicles.
Once you collected the samples, you didn't match or test the DNA or anything like that afterwards, correct?
That is beyond my scope.
Understood. And did you collect any DNA samples from the Ford Expedition?
I did.
And you booked those samples and transported them back to the lab?
I collected, I swapped the areas for possible biological material, touch DNA as I explained earlier, and I collected them and I booked them also.
And the Ford Expedition was processed roughly over 4 months after the date of the murder, correct? About 5 months after the date of...
That would call for speculation on your part.
Sustain.
Well, you mentioned, you testified previously that you were filled in on certain details about the investigation, correct?
Correct.
To have an idea of what to look for when you're processing the vehicle?
Correct.
You were told the date of the murder was January 23rd, 2017, correct?
I believe so.
And so the processing of the Ford Expedition occurred on June 15th, 2017, right?
That's correct.
Regarding the Ford Expedition, you said no knives were recovered, correct?
That's correct.
And after you finished processing, do you have these items? Do you have any idea what happened to them afterwards? In terms of how they were tested, who tested them, or anything like that?
No.
No?
My role is to recover evidence from the scene of vehicle searches and prepare them for long-term packaging, long-term storage, and that is the extent of my role.
And you also, I believe, clarified that your job was to recover biological or physical evidence, correct? Can you
Correct.
explain briefly the difference between biological and physical evidence?
When I refer to biological evidence, I am specifically looking for things of like blood or semen or touch DNA sort of type of evidence. When I say physical evidence, I'm looking for more like non-DNA evidence such as firearms or knives or actual objects that are not focused on DNA.
Understood. And you received a briefing prior to processing the Ford Expedition as well, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. Nothing further, Your Honor.
Any further other people?
When you said that you processed the Ford Expedition, you processed the Ford Expedition for potential DNA, not necessarily DNA, correct?
Correct.
Nothing further.
Anything further, Ms. Bennett? Thank you, Ms. Kwan. You're excused. Excuse me, call the next witness.
And for the record, say and spell your first and last name, please.
Randy Zepeda, RANDYZEPEDA.
Thank you. Sir, can you tell us how it is that you're employed?
I'm employed by the Los Angeles Police Department, Forensic Sciences Division.
And are you assigned to a particular area or division within the lab?
Yes, I'm assigned to the Serology DNA unit.
And how many years have you been assigned to the DNA unit?
About 15 years now.
What is serology, if you could tell us?
Serology is kind of just an antiquated term for the analysis of biological fluids.
And what is DNA?
DNA is a molecule that's found in most of the cells of your body that acts as like a blueprint for your body. So it tells your body not only how to build itself, but how to function. DNA is unique to every individual, aside from identical twins.
And it remains the same throughout our life? In other
Yes.
words, if you were to take blood or a oral sample, what's referred to as a buccal swab, that would remain, my profile would remain constant?
Yes, as far as the forensic DNA profile, that remains constant throughout your whole life.
Okay. What are your responsibilities within the DNA serology unit?
In the serology unit, we deal mostly with biological evidence. So my job is to identify any potential biological evidence, sample that evidence, preserve it, analyze it. I'll issue reports. I'll also technically review reports issued by other analysts and work completed by other analysts, and I'll testify in court to those results.
Okay. And you generate reports yourself?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And in terms of the DNA process, has that changed throughout the course of your work on this case that you're here to testify about?
Yes, it's changed in the fact that we look at more locations in our DNA now, but the overall process is still just about the same.
In terms of the process itself, is the DNA process within your lab and other crime labs across the country done by instrumentation in terms of various steps in the process?
Yes, some steps are more labor intensive for the analyst than others, but for the most part, most steps we use some sort of instrument or liquid handling robot to assist us in performing our analysis.
Now, we heard earlier about, from Jane Kwan, about the lab certification or accreditation process by an individual outside agency. Are there certain standards and protocols that you follow within the DNA or serology unit with respect to methodology, validation, instrumentation, and things like that?
Yes, there is.
Okay. And in order to ensure that the results that you obtain are reliable, accurate, and are reproducible, do you follow, again, a certain protocol and with respect to every single case that you touch?
Yes, we have protocols in set for every procedure we perform in the lab.
And with respect to this case, in all cases, in general within the serology unit, are case files generated that contain all of your results as well as the results from any of the instrumentation that is utilized during the process of developing, let's say, DNA profiles?
Yes, so with any case, we produce a case packet, and basically, like she said, that's a packet of all of the documentation that we produce for that case. So it can be handwritten notes from observations we make in the lab of the evidence, or printouts from instrumentation that we've used to perform various steps of our analysis. We maintain all of those in one place, one case packet. And this is my case packet here today, so I bring it even just to reference what I've done in this case.
Okay. And in terms of the DNA unit or the serology unit itself, are there also quality assurance measures or controls that are in place for, let's say, purposes of contamination? To prevent
Yes.
contamination.
Yes, there are.
Can you tell us briefly about those?
Yes, some quality assurance measures that we take into place are things like wearing personal protective equipment. So personal protective equipment not only protects us from the evidence, but the evidence from our own contamination. So we'll wear things like masks, we'll wear gloves, we wear laboratory coats, sometimes we'll even wear hairnets. And these things we change, especially our gloves, in between handling different items of evidence. We also do things like analyzing evidence samples separately from reference samples.
Let me stop you just there, and we'll move on to the rest of that answer, but you just brought up something important. Can you explain to us the difference between a reference sample and an evidence sample?
An evidence sample is an unknown sample. So it's something that we locate at the crime scene, or we sample off an item, and we don't know the source of that sample. We don't know where that DNA might potentially come from. A reference sample is a known sample. So that's a sample that's taken directly from the individual to use for comparison to an evidence sample.
Do reference samples tend to come in the form of one or two different sources?
Yes, in general, we get reference samples that are usually oral samples, so swabs of the inside of your mouth, or blood reference samples, which are blood cards that are generated by the coroner's office.
And do you test evidence samples on separate times from reference samples, so again, not to cross-contaminate the evidence?
Yes, so we analyze references completely separate from evidence samples.
Okay. Back to some of the quality assurance measures that are in place in the DNA section. Is the DNA section and the lab itself also secure facilities and areas?
Yes.
And does the DNA section also maintain a database where, if, let's say, you were to get a profile that you didn't expect, or that you could run through the database that contains criminalists from the crime lab, their DNA reference samples to cross-compare to ensure that you're not putting your own DNA into a sample?
Yes, we do maintain a quality control database that has even my own reference sample contained with it, where we can check when we get unknown samples or an unknown DNA profile from a sample that it's not our own contamination into that item.
And in terms of your work, is it also peer reviewed?
Yes.
What does that mean? What does peer review mean?
Peer review means that all of the work that we complete gets re-looked at by another analyst. So even from forms that we generate to my final case laboratory report that I generate, a second analyst will go through, look at each one of those items, and they'll sign to a test that essentially they would come to the same conclusions that whoever is authoring either that page or that report came to. In addition to the peer review, we also have an administrative review process, which is a second review by someone like a supervisor, but that's more for the content of the report as well as things like grammar and spelling, things like that.
And all of that is done for the purpose of what?
To maintain the accuracy in our results.
In terms of the certification within the DNA unit, are you required to undergo proficiency testing on a regular basis?
Yes, twice a year.
What is proficiency testing?
Proficiency testing is a test that's administered to us by an outside agency. They know what the results of the test are. We do not. And we treat it essentially like a regular case. So I would analyze it as if I was analyzing a evidence sample from a crime scene. I produce a report, and all those reports and results go back to that outside agency, and they'll say, yes, you performed these tests as expected. You obtained the correct DNA profiles. You made the correct comparisons.
Can you tell us a little bit about your education, training, and experience that qualifies you for your position in the lab?
Yes, I have a Bachelor's of Science in Biology from the California State University, Los Angeles, as well as Master's of Science coursework in Biology, also from the California State University, Los Angeles. I've attended several trainings with the California Department of Justice, California Criminalistics Institute, in the fields of forensic biology, as well as forensic DNA typing. I've also had separate in-house LAPD training in forensic biology and forensic DNA typing. Those were both years-long trainings. Ever since I was initially trained, I'm also required to attend continuing education courses at least once a year. So since I became a DNA analyst in 2013, every year I've taken an additional course of continuing education since my original training.
Approximately how many case samples would you say you've analyzed using DNA typing techniques?
Tens of thousands.
And have you also qualified and testified before with respect to DNA analysis and the results multiple times?
Yes.
Tell us what is, or describe for us what is DNA typing.
DNA typing is essentially producing a DNA profile from an unknown or reference sample. Now, a DNA profile is essentially we're looking at different locations in your DNA. Currently, we look at 23 different locations plus a gender marker. These are locations in your DNA that are variable, so they're different from individual to individual, but like I mentioned earlier, they're also stable throughout your lifetime. Now, at each one of these locations, you have essentially two numbers. So let's say I'm looking at the first location, you'll have two numbers. One of those numbers you get from your mother, one of those numbers you get from your father. And we'll look at all of those 23 different locations. We essentially get those number pairs for every single one of those locations, and that is your DNA profile. And we can use that to compare it to, like I said, items of evidence. We can compare it to other DNA profiles. And we can, from there, even calculate statistics on how rare that association is.
Is there a standard procedure that's utilized in the crime lab and the same across, let's say, the country or maybe even the world, that is used to develop a DNA profile, whether it be from a reference sample or an evidence sample?
In general, yes, the procedure is pretty much the same no matter which lab, forensic lab that you're working in. Now, the different chemicals that we use or instrumentation might be different, but in general, the process of obtaining a DNA profile is pretty consistent, not only throughout the country, but throughout the whole world.
And are there particular steps that are used in processing samples?
Yes.
What's the first step?
The first step in general in processing a DNA evidence sample is extraction. Now, extraction is when you take a sample. So in any given case, I'll have, let's say, several tubes labeled with case identifiers for that specific case, unique to this case, and I'll add some chemicals to it. And what those chemicals do is they break open the cells and release the DNA from the cells. Now, after the DNA is extracted from those cells, I can run it through a different instrument or a different robotic instrument to clean up that sample, essentially removing all the other cellular junk and proteins, just leaving the DNA behind.
Okay. What's the next step?
The next step is quantitation. That's when I take that sample I produce after that first step and I measure how much DNA is in that sample. We need to know how much DNA we have so we can know if we can move on to the next step or how to basically treat the samples for that next step.
You need a certain amount of DNA present in order to run the DNA tests, correct?
Yes, we have a minimum amount of DNA that we need to even attempt to obtain a DNA profile, but there's also a range of DNA that we target for our next step.
And your laboratory and section set thresholds for minimum amounts, correct?
Yes.
Okay. What's the next stage? Let's say you were to be able to determine that you had sufficient DNA to proceed. What's the next stage?
The next step would be amplification, where we make copies of the DNA that we have, and these copies are kind of special. We add basically markers to them, fluorescent markers, so we can visualize those copies in the final step, which is the DNA typing step.
And you said the final step's the instrumentation set.
The final step is our DNA typing, but we use instruments to visualize that DNA.
Okay. So when you initially started your work on this case back in 2017, was it, did you look at a different number of markers or locations on the DNA than you do now? You told us now you use 23 plus a gender marker. What was the number back when you first started out doing testing on this case in 2017?
In 2017, we looked at 15 different locations plus a gender marker.
Okay. And what was the testing kit that you used in 2017?
We used a kit called Identifiler.
Okay. And that was the industry standard at the time, correct?
Yes, many labs use the Identifiler kit.
And going forward, at some point, your lab, as well as other labs across the country, transitioned, as you talked about, to these testing kits where we now look at 23 different locations. Plus.
Yes, all labs were federally mandated to begin to use an expanded kit. So we switched to a kit that looks at 23 different locations plus the gender typing.
What kit is that?
That is Fusion 6C.
In terms of the evidence that you processed in this case, did all of that take place under a particular LAPD case number, DR number?
Yes, ma'am.
And was that DR number 17-21-5194?
05194.
Okay. And did you also receive or were you provided with reference samples in this case?
Yes, I was.
Back in 2017, were you provided with a reference sample or an oral swab for an individual by the name of Robert Baker?
Yes, ma'am.
And was that identified as item number 158 under this DR number for this case?
Yes, it was.
Okay. At some point subsequent to the reference sample for Robert Baker, were you also provided with an oral swab or a reference sample for defendant Monica Sementilli?
Yes, I was.
And was that identified under that same DR number as item number 201?
Yes, it was.
Did you also receive numerous blood stains from a crime scene collected by Corey Hawk?
Yes.
And did you know Corey Hawk from the lab?
Yes, I did.
Was she somebody that worked in your field identification unit, someone that would go out to crime scenes and process crime scenes or vehicles or things of that nature?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you also receive a collection of swabs from a Jane Kwan, who just left the courtroom as you came in, from the victim's Porsche?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Did you develop profiles for the reference samples in this case?
I did.
Did you also, at some point in time, receive a reference sample for the victim? I think you talked about reference samples that you normally get from the coroner's department. Did you get one from the coroner's department in this case?
Yes.
And again, was that a bloodstain card for victim Fabio Sementilli?
Yes, it was a reference blood sample.
What item number was that?
That was item 72.
Okay. So that was your a third reference that we talked about so far, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And did you develop profiles from the evidence samples that you received from Corey Hawk?
Yes.
Did you also develop DNA profiles from the evidence profiles you received from Jane Kwan?
I did, yes.
From the evidence samples you received from Jane Kwan.
Yes.
And then once you developed profiles from all of the evidence, did you make a comparison over a course of many years to the reference sample profiles that you developed?
I did, yes.
And did you write numerous reports in this case?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. I want to start with your initial report from February 9th of 2017. Did you reference in that particular report evidence samples from the crime scene as well as the Porsche?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you screen various evidence samples that you received from Corey Hawk for blood?
Yes.
And did the evidence samples that you received from Corey Hawk screen positive for blood?
Yes, these were positive for a presumptive test for blood.
Okay.
Yes.
Same type of chemical test that would show you a particular color if it tested positive for blood?
Yes, it is a color change test.
Okay. And
Use for a second if I might.
sure.
Let's stand up and stretch.
Thank you. With respect to your February 9th of 2017 report, did you determine that there were samples that matched the victim's DNA profile in this case?
Yes, there was a sample that matched the victim's profile.
Or samples?
Yes, from this initial report, there's only one sample that initially matched the victim's profile.
Right. Show you an exhibit that's already been marked as People 7. Has a 3 in the lower left corner. Do you recognize what you see here?
I do.
And what is this?
This was a exhibit that was created by our architectural drafting aide to demonstrate where different items of evidence were located at the crime scene.
All right. And
there's also a key to the right that identifies item numbers by the photo ID number along with whether or not they screened positive for blood and then were marked as red versus items that did not and therefore black. Is that correct?
Yes.
And did you work with the individuals in the architectural unit, or at least review this particular exhibit previously to determine its accuracy?
Yes, I didn't help create it, but I did review it after they created it.
And was it accurate in terms of the results that you obtained?
Yes.
Okay. Did you also review, in this case, crime scene photographs with respect to a location where the victim was murdered?
Yes.
Okay. And in reviewing those crime scene photographs, did they assist you in determining which particular swabs may be more fruitful to test for DNA, depending on where they were located and what that area looked like?
Yes, ultimately it's up to the investigators which samples we analyze, but me conferring with the investigators, I can give them an idea of what are the best items to choose for DNA typing.
Okay. So you confer with detectives, prosecutors, to assist in narrowing down the selection?
And mostly just detectives, but yes.
Okay. Looking at People's 7 that has a 39 in the lower left corner. If we look at PID number 18, which appears to be that circle of red, PID 18 on the counter area, is that one of the items that was tested?
Yes.
By you?
Yes.
And did that, again, screen positive for blood?
Yes, it screened presumptively positive for blood.
And did that stain match the victim's reference profile or DNA profile in this case?
So for this specific item, picture ID 18, we received a partial DNA profile, and that was consistent with the DNA profile of Fabio Sementilli.
Okay. Showing you what was previously marked as People's 7. It has a 49 in the lower left corner. The entryway to this crime scene at the front door. If we look at what's been tagged there as PID 23, again, looks very similar to the circular red stain that we saw on the counter. This area here, was that another sample that tested positive for blood?
Yes, it tested presumptively positive for blood.
And again, did this particular item match to the victim's DNA profile in this case?
Yes, this was also a partial DNA profile, and it was consistent with the DNA profile obtained from Fabio Sementilli. Previously marked People's 193 with an 8 in the lower left corner. Is this another architectural diagram relative to the victim's Porsche that you previously reviewed in this case? Yes.
And just like the legend or key that we saw with respect to People's 7, number 3, the diagram of the crime scene, does this legend here that we see at the top also appear to be consistent with or accurate for the results you obtained with respect to what tested positive for blood and what did not?
Yes, I did previously review this diagram.
Okay. Looking at what's been previously marked as People's 193 with the 20 in the lower left corner. In addition to the crime scene photos, did you also review photographs of the interior, the driver's compartment area of his Porsche?
Yes, I have seen them.
Okay. And with respect to what we see here, PID 23, the brake or the clutch, I think it was referenced as a brake pedal initially and then changed to clutch. Again, was that another swab that screened positive for blood and matched the victim's DNA profile?
Yes, so this one actually screened presumptively positive for blood, and this was a complete profile. So this was a DNA profile from one individual, a complete profile, and that one matched the DNA profile obtained from Fabio Sementilli.
If hypothetically someone walked through the victim's blood and tracked it into a vehicle, would this be commonly an area that you would test for potential DNA?
I mean, yes, if somebody walked through a bloody crime scene and then drove a car away, I would test the car pedals to see if there was potentially blood.
Okay. Series of 3 DNA charts. They have numbers 5, 7, and 8. Excuse me, 5, 6, and 7 in the bottom left corner. May they be marked as People's 195, please?
Yes.
Showing you what's now been marked as People's 195 as a 5 in the lower corner. Do you recognize what you see here?
Yes, so this is a summary of my DNA typing results for several items.
Okay. What do we see here along the left column in white under genetic locus tested? What is that?
So earlier when I mentioned that when I initially started this case, I was looking at 15 different locations plus amylogenin, or the gender typing. These are the names of those 15 different locations, plus the AMEL, which is amylogenin or gender typer. The profile at each one of those locations, those are the numbers I was talking about. So let's say the top one where it's D8, if you look over at the victim, he's at 1215. So you've gotten the 12 from from one of his parents and the 15 from his other parent. Now if you go down to CSF 1P0, the fourth one down, you'll see there's only 11. Well, that's actually an 1111. So we got an 11 from his mom and an 11 from his dad. We just notated as a singular 11 when they have the same number for both copies.
That's your lab's protocol.
Yes.
So if if we go down, let's say, to TPOXX or VWA, we see that happen again, or D18 or D5, correct? I'm sorry, not D5, just D18, correct?
Yes, so VWA, TPOXX, and D18, those would be like, so VWA would be an 1818, TPOXX an 88, and D18 a 1515. Now some labs do notate it as the number twice, but we just write the number one time in our lab.
So item 72, that's the reference sample we talked about earlier that you received, the blood card or the blood stain card from the coroner's office for victim Fabio Sementilli in this case.
Yes, that's correct.
So this would be the DNA profile that you developed back in 2017 based on that blood stain card.
Yes.
Okay. And then do you use this reference profile to make comparisons to evidence profiles that you then develop from evidence items?
Yes.
Okay. And if we look at amylogenin, the gender marker, we see here an XY. What does that mean?
XY indicates male. XX or just X would indicate female.
Okay. If we look at the column next to the victim's profile where it says kitchen counter, item 17, that would be the item number under the property report of this DR, correct?
Yes.
And PID would be the photo ID number, number 18. What do we see here in this column?
That's a summary of the DNA typing results for that specific item.
That you obtained?
Yes.
Okay. That's the kitchen counter that we looked at. In Exhibit 7 that has a 39 in the lower left corner. Is that correct?
Yes.
And again, you make a comparison between the victim's DNA profile and the evidence item, correct? The profile you developed from the actual evidence item.
Yes, so one of the steps of a comparison is to actually just visually compare those DNA types. So I would go through and look at, what's the first location, D8. It's the victim is a 1215. The kitchen counter is a 1215. That's consistent. Then I would go location by location. At the end of the evidence profile, you see there's two locations down here that say ND. That stands for no data. These I indicated earlier were partial DNA profiles. We didn't obtain DNA profile information for those two locations.
So that's why you clarified and said that with respect to these two samples, the evidence item, you developed a profile that was consistent with the victim, whereas in the third, you actually got data at those locations, D5 and FGA, and you were able to say it's a match.
Yes, so we'll only be able to say match if it's matches at every single location. Now, if we have an instance like this, where we have two locations where we didn't obtain data, we would only say consistent with.
Also, when you are interpreting the data, you aren't looking at the numbers or the alleles that are reported out. You actually look at the raw data as it comes off the instrumentation itself, correct?
We look at the raw data as it's coming off the instrument itself, in addition to the numbers or the summary for each different location, just because it's, like I said, in simplest terms, one of the steps is to look at the physical numbers that we obtain and compare those numbers, but we also look at things like the quality of the data that we're obtaining. So even though we let's say we have a DNA profile where we get information at every single location, if the quality is bad, then we might not use that for comparison.
Okay. And again, we talked earlier about how there are thresholds that are set in the lab. We're not going to get into a whole conversation about that, but any information that falls or data that falls below the laboratory's threshold is information that you may or may not take into consideration in reporting out.
So yeah, so whenever we bring on a DNA typing kit, we always perform a validation study. Essentially, what that is we use that study to do things like set thresholds or quality indicators for evidence. We learn how the evidence is going to behave in our laboratory with our equipment. We're able to set thresholds based on that.
Okay. And again, if we look over here in the final column, that's from the Porsche, the clutch that we talked about.
Yes.
Okay. Which matches the victim.
Yes.
Okay. I want to move on to a report that you drafted dated July 25th of 2017. Were you provided at this point, or by this point, with the reference sample for Robert Baker?
Yes, I was.
And we talked about that came in the format or the source of a buccal swab or an oral swab from the interior of the mouth.
Yes.
Okay. And did the swab itself, or the swabs that you received with respect to this reference sample for Robert Baker, come in an envelope from LAPD detectives Tellis and Gable that contained identifying information with respect to the individual Robert Baker?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And did you develop a profile for Robert Baker?
Yes, I did.
And is it a typical procedure that you would obtain reference samples perhaps at a time later after you receive evidence samples?
Yes, sometimes when I begin analysis on a case, I have no reference samples at all.
Showing you what's now been marked as People's 195 that has a 7 in the lower left corner. Can you tell us what we see here in this column that is blue next to the various locations that are tested?
Yes, this is a summary of the DNA profile of Robert Baker.
And again, if we look over one column, we see a column that at the top says kitchen floor, item 9, PID 9. Is this the DNA profile that you developed for that particular sample?
Yes, ma'am.
Would that be consistent with what we see in People's 7 that has a number 32 in the lower left corner for PID numbers 9? We'll start with 9.
Yes.
Okay. And so this is the DNA profile you developed from that blood stain.
Yes.
We look one over to item 10, PID 10. Is this the DNA profile that you developed from the stain that we see here? Again, People's 7 has a 32 in the lower left corner, this blood stain here.
Yes, ma'am.
And on the far right, we see, again, a column that's marked garage floor, item 43, PID 36. Is that consistent with what we see here in People's 7 that has a 16 in the lower left corner? What we see here in 36 and a close-up of that red stain.
Yes, ma'am.
And so, did you make a comparison between the reference profile you developed for Robert Baker to these various stains at the crime scene, both in the kitchen, on the floor, and on the garage floor?
Yes, I did.
And what was your determination?
The DNA profiles from these items matched the DNA profile obtained from Robert Baker.
Councilman Murphy, it's time to take our recess.
Back to Exhibit 195 that has a 7 in the lower left corner. We were talking about the comparisons that you made to the stains on the kitchen floor and the garage floor. Can you tell us, with respect to item 9, or PID 9, what were you able to determine?
So this was the swab of the red stain from the floor. This item matched the DNA profile obtained from Robert Baker.
And what about the next item, PID 10, item 10, again, the other stain on the kitchen floor?
This item also matched the DNA profile obtained from Robert Baker.
And if we look at the profiles next to each other, we're talking about the exact same profile, correct?
Yes, you see the same numbers at every single location.
And then the garage floor, the column to the far right, item 43, PID 36, what did you determine regarding that item?
That was the swab of the reddish brown stain from the floor. That DNA profile matched the DNA profile obtained from Robert Baker.
Showing you what's now been marked as Exhibit 195 that has a 6 in the lower left corner. Again, looking at the reference sample in blue, the DNA profile you developed for Robert Baker, but now looking at evidence samples recovered from the Porsche, the left door panel, the interior left door panel, what do we see here? Which would be item 54, PID 11.
Yes, this DNA profile also matched the DNA profile obtained from Robert Baker.
And the one next to that, the left, or the driver's seat controls, which is item 61, PID 18. What were your conclusions about that particular item?
This DNA profile also matched the DNA profile obtained from Robert Baker.
Okay. And again, just for reference, the interior driver's door in Exhibit 193 that has a 14 in the bottom left corner. This is the stain here that you tested, correct?
Yes.
And with respect to the driver's seat control in Exhibit 193 that has an 18 on the bottom left, again, this red stain that we see next to the red sticker with the arrow pointing to the stain?
Yes.
Now, did you, when you say it matched to Baker, you talked to us before the break about being able to calculate statistics to determine the rarity of a particular profile. Did you calculate statistics in this case?
I did.
And what did you determine with respect to all of these results contained in Exhibit 195-6, 195-7?
So the DNA profiles obtained from, I'll go through the item numbers, item 43, 54, 61, 9, and 10 occur approximately 1 in 5 quintillion unrelated individuals.
I'm sorry. Say it again, please.
1 in 5 quintillion unrelated individuals.
If we hear the number quintillion, I mean, most of us know what a million or a billion or maybe even a trillion, but when we talk about a quintillion, how many zeros are we talking about?
5 quintillion is a 5 followed by 18 zeros.
Okay. So what is the current population of the Earth, approximately?
At the time we did this testing, it was about 7 billion individuals.
It's probably somewhat greater than that, but not quite 8, correct?
It's around 8 now.
Okay. So how many times the population of the planet Earth would you need before you would see that number again, that profile?
So if you, Earth, like I said, is at this time was about 7 billion individuals. You would need 700 million populations the size of Earth. So 700 million times what Earth's population is to have 5 quintillion. So on average, we only expect to see this DNA profile, 1 in every 5 quintillion unrelated individuals.
Okay, so we're talking about a very rare DNA profile here.
It's a very small number, yes.
Okay. All right, let's talk about a report that you authored that was dated November 9th of 2017 with respect to, again, various samples such as
evidence from the crime scene. We look at what's been previously marked as People's 8 that has the number 11 in the lower left corner. Placard or PID number 1, this blood stain that we see here out on the patio area. Did you do an analysis of that stain?
Yes, I did.
And what result did you obtain?
This DNA profile was consistent with the DNA profile obtained from Fabio Sementilli.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Sorry, it was consistent with the DNA profile obtained from Fabio Sementilli.
Okay. And did you calculate a statistic?
Yes. So in this case, because when I analyzed the reference initially, I was only analyzing 15 locations. Once I got to this request, we had already changed over to looking at 23 different locations. So I only had 15 locations to compare because of the limitation of the reference. So using 15 of 23 locations, this DNA profile occurs in approximately 1 in 2 quintillion unrelated individuals.
Okay. So again, you told us a quintillion has 18 zeros.
Yes, so this would be a 2 followed by 18 zeros.
How about PID number 3 that we see here in People's 8 that has a number 12 in the lower left corner? Again, another stain from the patio area. Did you obtain a result for that particular stain?
Yes, this DNA profile is also consistent with the DNA profile obtained from Fabio Sementilli, and it was the same statistic. So using using 15 of 23 locations, the DNA profile obtained occurs in approximately 1 in 2 quintillion unrelated individuals.
Okay. What about the stain that we can see here in People's Exhibit 7? Has a 41 in the lower left corner. Looks like it's on the door jamb area leading to the patio from the kitchen.
Yes, so this was a red stain on the back door interior door jamb. This DNA profile that I obtained from this item was also consistent with the DNA profile obtained from Fabio Sementilli, and using 15 of 23 locations, the DNA profile obtained occurs in approximately 1 in 2 quintillion unrelated individuals.
Looking at the stain inside the kitchen under PID 12, in People's Exhibit 7 with a 29 in the lower left corner, a stain on this drawer here, the exterior of the drawer. Did you obtain DNA results for that particular blood stain?
Yes, I did.
And what was that?
So we call this a swab of reddish-brown stain on the cabinet. This was consistent with a mixture of 2 contributors, meaning that we had DNA from at least 2 different people, including at least 2 males. the major DNA profile obtained from this item. So a major DNA profile is sometimes when we're able to perform a DNA analysis, we can determine a major profile. So we can see that there's the DNA from 2 people there, but based on the intensity of the peaks that we get during our analysis, so when the DNA profile is actually coming off the instrument, the raw data, we're able to determine a major profile. So it's a DNA profile that's much more intense than the other. So in this case, we were able to determine a major DNA profile. And the major DNA profile obtained from this item was consistent with the DNA profile obtained from Fabio Sementilli. So using 15 of 23 locations, the major DNA profile obtained from this item occurs in approximately 1 in 2 quintillion unrelated individuals. The DNA profile of the minor contributor cannot be determined. So I wasn't able to do anything with that minor contributor, that second person.
The major contributor, that just means that that individual, looking at the peak heights, contributed more DNA to the stain than the other, the minor.
Yes, so the intensity of those peaks of that DNA profile was more intense, so I was able to parse out that separate DNA profile.
And this also was a stain that tested positive for blood?
Yes, this was also positive for a presumptive test for blood.
Looking at the stain that we see on the leading edge deadbolt in Exhibit 724, PID 14. This red stain that we can see here, you were able to obtain results from that particular stain?
Yes, so we called this reddish stain from the garage door leading a deadbolt. So the DNA profile obtained from this item is consistent with a mixture of 2 contributors, including at least 2 males. The major DNA profile obtained from this item is consistent with the DNA profile obtained from Fabio Sementilli. So using 15 of 23 different locations, the major DNA profile obtained from this item occurs in approximately 1 in 2 quintillion unrelated individuals.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
The DNA profile of the minor contributor cannot be determined.
Okay. So again, you had one individual who contributed more DNA to the mixture profile than the other.
Yes.
Okay. Let me give you a hypothetical. If the killer were to have, after murdering Mr. Sementilli on the back patio, came through the kitchen, through this door that we see here where we have the PID 14, and went into the garage and had blood from the victim on his hands, would that be consistent with the type of stain and results that you had in this case?
Yes, I think it would be consistent because blood is a very rich source of DNA. There's lots of DNA in blood. So when you have something, let's say from just touching an item, like if I'm touching this microphone or my notes here, I'm less likely to leave behind DNA from touch. It's not as rich of a source of DNA as blood. So if there's blood on my hands, I'm more likely to leave DNA behind from that blood than me actually touching the item.
So if we talk about touch, we're talking about skin cells, right?
It could be skin
Sweat.
cells. It could also be sweat. It could be some saliva, just because we do a lot of things with our hands. Like I run my hand through my hair, I could cough. So there's lots of ways we deposit DNA onto our hands.
But that is a less, as you said, rich source than perhaps what we would find with blood or semen.
Yes.
All right. Let me ask you about another sample, looking at People's 7. It has a 37 in the bottom left corner. If we look at PID 16, this little blue rag, did you obtain any results from this item?
Yes. So this, in my report, was called cutting from a reddish-brown stain on the blue towel. Item 23, PID 16. this DNA profile matched the DNA profile obtained from Robert Baker. The DNA profile obtained from this item occurs in approximately once in greater than 1 septillion unrelated individuals.
So if we're talking about a septillion, how many zeros are we talking about here?
That's a 1 followed by 24 zeros.
Did you also test a stain from the first floor hallway closet door,
PID 25?
Yes.
What was the result that you obtained, if any?
The DNA profile obtained from this item was consistent with a mixture of 2 contributors, including at least 1 male. The major DNA profile obtained from, I believe we called this the swab of the reddish-brown stain on the hallway closet, was consistent with the DNA profile obtained from Fabio Sementilli.
Okay.
So using 15 of 23 locations, that major DNA profile obtained from this item occurs in approximately 1 in 2 quintillion unrelated individuals.
And again, was this a stain that tested positive for blood?
Yes, it tested presumptively positive for blood.
Same hypothetical, if after the murder of Fabio Sementilli, the killer went through the home in order to stage a crime scene and transferred blood onto the closet door, would that be consistent?
Yes.
Looking at a stain from that same area, but this time the hallway floor, PID 26, did you test that item?
Yes.
And what results did you obtain?
The DNA profile obtained from the swab of the reddish-brown stain from the hallway floor was consistent with a mixture of 2 contributors, including at least 1 male. The major DNA profile obtained from the sample is consistent with the DNA profile obtained from Fabio Sementilli. Same statistic, using 15 of 23 locations, the major DNA profile obtained from this item occurs in approximately 1 in 2 quintillion unrelated individuals.
And that stain did also chemically test positive for blood?
Yes, it was presumptive positive for blood.
Looking at People's 193, there's a 16 in the bottom left corner. The stain that we see here on the steering wheel in the Porsche, did you test that particular stain?
Yes.
And what result did you obtain?
This was
PID 14.
item 57, correct?
57 is the swab item number, and the PID
Yes.
number is 14.
So the DNA profile obtained from this item matches the DNA profile obtained from Robert Baker.
And did that stain also test positive for blood?
Yes, it did.
And did you calculate a statistic?
Yes, this DNA profile occurs approximately once in greater than 1 septillion unrelated individuals.
And you told us a septillion means 24 zeros.
Yes.
Okay. Let's move on to your report dated May 15th of 2018. Showing you what was previously marked as People 7, page 18 in the lower left corner. Now we're talking about the manual garage door release handle. Did you test a swab of that particular area?
Yes, I did.
And what, if any, results did you obtain? This would be PID 39, swab number 42.
So the DNA profile obtained from the swab of the garage door track release handle is consistent with a mixture of 2 contributors, including at least 1 male. The major DNA profile obtained from this item is consistent with the DNA profile obtained from Robert Baker. Using 13 of 23 locations, the major DNA profile obtained from this item occurs in approximately 1 in 900 trillion unrelated individuals. The DNA profile of the minor contributor could not be determined. Sorry. Robert Baker could be included at the remaining locations, but I couldn't determine a major contributor.
So in other words, the remaining locations were consistent with his profile, his DNA profile.
His DNA profile can be seen in the remaining locations, but I couldn't determine a major DNA profile.
So if we're talking about 1 trillion, how many zeros is that? Or what are we looking at in terms of a number 900 trillion?
This is a 9 followed by 14 zeros.
In November of 2018, were you asked to provide a portion of the reference sample for Robert Baker to a DNA analyst on the sheriff's side of the crime lab?
Yes.
And who did you provide a portion of item 158, that swab, the 2 swabs for Robert Baker? Who did you provide that to?
Criminalist Leslie Thompson.
Do you know Leslie?
I know her from the sheriff's department, but not personally.
But you share, the
facility.
LAPD and the sheriff's department share the same building, correct?
Yes.
For the crime lab purposes.
Yes, that's correct.
I want to talk to you now about your report dated November 12th of 2020 with respect to some of the samples from the crime scene. Did you go back and use the statistical methods that had been implemented after your original reports were issued in order to update the DNA interpretation protocols using some of the newer software available for complex mixtures like StarMix?
Yes. So when we first switched to 23 different locations, we didn't have the statistical software online. But once we brought it online, I was able to go back and look at some of these profiles that I typed at 23 locations and use this statistical software to help me make comparisons using these mixtures.
Previously, I asked you about items in the hallway. Let me just go back in case a photograph is needed. Looking at the hallway here in People 752, we previously spoke about PID 25 that we see here on the a stain, it looks like, on the actual closet door, this tiny little red stain. Was that the stain that you previously gave us results for?
Yes, item 29 PID 25.
Okay. That was the one that was consistent with the victim. We talked about transferring potential blood or DNA onto this area.
Yes.
And looking at the same hallway, the stain on the floor just outside the master bedroom, in People 7 with a 53 in the lower left corner. That was the other sample that we talked about that you said also was consistent with the victim in this case, Fabio Sementilli, correct?
Yes, the swab from the hallway floor, item 29 PID 25.
All right. Now, let's go back now and talk about a
couple of the items where you did some recalculations, and I want to start with 14, which is the leading edge deadbolt. Here it is. We looked at this before. People 7. There's a 24 in the lower left corner. Did you recalculate the statistic using StarMix software?
Yes, I did.
And what did you determine?
So I previously said this was a mixture of 2, including at least 1 male. So now with this statistical software, we're able to determine a few different things. So we have a mixture proportion. Mixture proportion is tells you about how much DNA each contributor contributes to that DNA profile. So we have mixture proportions of 98% and 2%. So the first contributor contributes about 98% of that DNA. The second contributes about 2% of that DNA. Fabio Sementilli is included as that 98% contributor. Robert Baker is excluded from this DNA profile. So using 15 of 23 locations, the DNA mixture profile is at least 300 quadrillion times more likely to occur if it originated from Fabio Sementilli and an unknown individual than if it originated from 2 unknown individuals.
Okay.
The remaining locations were not available for comparison because of Fabio's reference.
So the new statistical methods, if you use StarMix, you use what's referred to now as a likelihood ratio?
Yes. So a likelihood ratio is essentially a ratio of 2 different probabilities. So in this case, it was a probability that because it was 2 individuals, that Fabio and an unknown individual can be included in this DNA profile versus the probability that 2 unknown individuals could be included in this DNA profile.
And so with respect to this particular likelihood ratio, your terminology was at least 300 quadrillion times more likely.
Yes.
Okay. That it originated from the victim and another unknown individual than 2 unknowns.
That is correct.
Okay. And I previously asked you about items in the kitchen sink. Now I want to refer you to this vinegar bottle, Heinz white vinegar, that we see here in people 7 with a 40 in the lower left corner. And did you test some swabs relative to this item?
I did.
Okay. And with respect to PID 20, looking at this little red dot here, this red stain, swab 25, booked as item number 25 under the DR. Did you obtain any results from that bottle handle?
Yes. So the swab of the handle is consistent with a mixture of 3, including at least 2 males. I obtained mixture proportions of 40%, 35%, and 26%. Fabio Sementilli is included as the 40% contributor. Robert Baker is included as the 35% contributor. So using 15 of 23 locations, the DNA mixture profile is at least 200 sextillion times more likely to occur if it originated from Fabio Sementilli, Robert Baker, and an unknown individual than if it originated from 3 unknown individuals. Because of Fabio's reference sample, the remaining loci were not available for comparison, or the remaining locations.
Okay. So the software program that you utilize now, or that you utilized here in terms of breaking down the percentages, the program actually will tell you the percentages for each contributor, correct? It breaks it down for you.
Yes, it gives us an approximate percentage of how much DNA that contributor is contributing to the profile.
Your Honor, I have a laboratory photograph of this vinegar bottle along with various notations. May it be marked as Peoples 196?
Yes.
Showing you now it's been marked as Peoples 196, and there is a 2 in the lower left corner. Can you tell us if you recognize what you see depicted here?
Yes, this is, it's hard to see the vinegar bottle, but there's a vinegar bottle there. This is a photograph that was taken in our laboratory, and it's marked with where the samples were taken.
Okay.
So the swab of the handle that I just spoke about, in our laboratory for our tracking, we called it a LIMS number, and it's where you see that 12-4-1. That's where that sample was taken from.
Here?
Yes, and then it's pointing to where the on the handle it was taken.
The handle area here?
Yes.
Okay. And a LIMS number is just a laboratory identification management system, correct?
Yes, LIMS stands for Laboratory Information Management System.
And so that's just another way, other than PID numbers or property report numbers, of tracking a particular sample?
It's how we, within our laboratory, track samples. So it's laboratory specific.
And did you also take a swab, or did you analyze a swab of the blood stain on the bottle itself?
Yes.
And did you reach any conclusions, obtain any results regarding that item? This would be item 25, PID 20.
Yes. So the blood stain on the bottle, if you look on here, it's 12-4-2. So this was a mixture of 3 contributors, including at least 2 males. I obtained mixture proportions of 83%, 11%, and 6%. Fabio Sementilli is included as the 83% contributor. Robert Baker is included as the 6% contributor. Using 15 of 23 locations, the DNA mixture profile is at least 1 septillion times more likely to occur if it originated from Fabio Sementilli, Robert Baker, and an unknown individual than if it originated from 3 unknown individuals. And I wasn't able to use the remaining locations because with Fabio's reference, it wasn't available for comparison.
Now, at a subsequent time in March of 2021, did you issue another report going back to this item after receiving a reference swab, a buccal swab, for the defendant, Monica Sementilli, from Detective Mitzi Roberts under item number 201?
I did.
Okay. And did you then go back to look at this particular item, PID 20, item 25, with respect to this vinegar bottle?
I did.
And what, if anything, did you determine at that point?
So like I said before, this was a mixture of 3, including at least 2 males. The mixture proportions were 83%, 11%, and 6%. Fabio Sementilli is included as the 83% contributor. Monica Sementilli is included as the 11% contributor. And Robert Baker is included as the 6% contributor. So using 15 of 23 locations, the DNA mixture profile is at least 1 septillion times more likely to occur if it originated from Fabio Sementilli, Monica Sementilli, Robert Baker than if it originated from 3 unknown individuals.
What was that number again?
1 septillion.
So again, how many zeros?
24.
respect to swab 33, or item number 33, a blood stain from the master bedroom dresser, top drawer, PID 32. Was that a sample that you also analyzed for DNA?
Yes, this was a mixture of 2 individuals, including at least 1 male. I obtained mixture proportions of 87% and 13%. Fabio Sementilli is included as the 87% contributor. I have limited support for exclusion for Robert Baker. So for Fabio, using 15 of 23 locations, the partial DNA mixture profile is at least 90 billion times more likely to occur if it originated from Fabio Sementilli and an unknown individual than if it originated from 2 unknown individuals. For Robert, the partial DNA mixture profile is at least 20 times more likely to occur if it originated from 2 unknown individuals than if it originated from Robert Baker and an unknown individual. So basically, this analysis provides limited support that Robert Baker is excluded from the DNA profile, and we more often observe false exclusions in this likelihood ratio range.
I have nothing further, Your Honor.
Let's take our adjournment at this